The water looks calm from above, a blue sheet stretched flat by the morning light. But beneath that surface, the geometry of the ocean is collapsing. A loose cloud of fish that once moved as 100,000 independent bodies is being pressed inward, tightened like a fist. The pressure does not come from a single direction. It arrives from everywhere at once. Dark shapes slide in from the edges of the school, smooth and deliberate, cutting off escape routes without ever rushing. The fish react the only way they can. They pull closer together. Distance, which once meant safety, becomes the enemy. This is the beginning of a dolphin hunt, and it does not look like violence at first. It looks like choreography. The fish form what biologists call a bait ball, but the term barely hints at what is happening. A bait ball is not just a cluster. It is a forced geometry, a living compression created by predators that understand group movement better than the prey itself. Dolphins do not chase individual fish across open water unless they have no alternative. That would be inefficient, metabolically expensive, and unpredictable. Instead, they reshape the environment by reshaping the prey. They turn open water into a shrinking arena where every direction leads back toward danger. The dolphins begin wide. At first, they are shadows at the perimeter, moving parallel to the fish rather than toward them. This matters. A direct approach would scatter the school, forcing hundreds of small chases. Parallel movement applies pressure without panic. As the fish sense the encroachment, their instinct is to maintain cohesion, because isolation is fatal in open water. Dolphins exploit that instinct. They do not break the school. They preserve it, compress it, and slowly wind it tighter. As the circle narrows, roles emerge within the pod. These roles are not rigid assignments handed out in advance, but flexible positions that shift with the flow of the hunt. Some dolphins act as drivers, staying behind the school and applying forward pressure. Their job is not to attack, but to push, keeping the fish moving toward the center of the forming sphere. Others take on the role of blockers, flanking the sides and darting ahead of the school to prevent escape routes from opening. When a wave of fish attempts to break outward, a blocker cuts across the path, turning the surge back inward like a shepherd redirecting a panicked flock. Closer to the center are the strikers. These dolphins do not rush in immediately. They wait. Their role is precision, not containment. Once the bait ball tightens enough that individual fish can no longer maneuver freely, the strikers surge through the mass, snapping rapidly, taking multiple fish in seconds. They do not linger. A strike is fast, controlled, and brief. Then the dolphin exits, allowing the structure of the bait ball to reform rather than explode outward. The hunt continues in cycles, compression followed by targeted feeding, over and over, until the school is exhausted. What makes this system so effective is not strength or speed alone, but coordination in conditions where vision is unreliable. Much of this hunting happens in murky coastal water, where suspended sediment limits visibility to a few body lengths. Here, sight becomes secondary. Sound takes over. Dolphins navigate and coordinate through echolocation, producing rapid clicks that bounce off fish bodies and return as detailed acoustic images. These clicks are not just for individual perception. They form a shared information network. Each dolphin reads the density, movement, and shape of the bait ball through sound, adjusting its position without needing constant visual confirmation of the others. In effect, the pod builds a three-dimensional map of the prey in real time, updating it hundreds of times per second. This sensory edge allows dolphins to hunt as a distributed system, rather than as isolated individuals. A driver does not need to see a striker to know when to ease pressure. A blocker senses when a gap is forming long before the fish can exploit it. The bait ball becomes an object the pod manipulates collectively, like a sculptor working wet clay, responding instantly to changes in resistance and flow. From within the bait ball, the experience is radically different. Fish flash silver as they twist and turn, their bodies reflecting light in chaotic pulses. Each individual responds to micro-movements of its neighbors, but the density becomes overwhelming. Collisions increase. Oxygen levels drop slightly as thousands of gills compete in a confined space. The very defense strategy that protects the fish from solitary predators now accelerates their vulnerability. There is no room to accelerate, no space to turn sharply. escape becomes mathematically improbable. This is why herding outperforms chasing. A single fish fleeing at full speed forces a predator into a high-energy pursuit with an uncertain outcome. A bait ball offers the opposite: predictable motion, reduced escape options, and the ability to take multiple prey items with minimal effort. For a dolphin, whose brain consumes a large portion of its daily energy budget, efficiency is not optional. It is survival. Observers often mistake this behavior for play. Dolphins arc through the bait ball, roll on their sides, and burst upward through the fish in what looks like exuberant motion. There is splashing. There are rapid turns. To a human eye, it resembles a game. But this interpretation collapses under closer inspection. Every movement has a function. Rolling exposes the mouth to a denser cross-section of prey. Bursting upward forces fish downward, tightening the sphere. Even apparent pauses are strategic, allowing the bait ball to reform rather than disperse. The confusion between play and hunting arises because dolphins are capable of both, and because their intelligence expresses itself through complex movement. But play lacks constraint. Hunting does not. In a bait ball, there is no wasted motion. Each dolphin adjusts its speed and angle to maintain pressure without breaking the structure. When a dolphin peels away, another slides seamlessly into its place. The system holds. This cooperative efficiency is the product of evolutionary pressure acting over millions of years. Dolphins are warm-blooded predators in a cold medium, losing heat constantly to the surrounding water. Prolonged chases would bleed energy through both exertion and thermoregulation. By compressing prey and shortening feeding windows, dolphins minimize time spent at peak output. The hunt becomes a series of brief, high-reward actions rather than a drawn-out pursuit. There is also a social dimension to this strategy. Young dolphins learn by participating at the edges of hunts, watching how adults position themselves, how pressure is applied when strikes occur. The bait ball becomes a moving classroom, where success depends on reading the group as much as reading the prey. Mistakes are visible. Gaps are felt immediately. Over time, individuals refine their timing and spatial awareness, contributing more effectively to the collective. The visual rhythm of the hunt reinforces this sense of orchestration. From above, the bait ball tightens into a near-perfect sphere, rotating slowly as dolphins circle. Inside, flashes of fish pulse like static trapped in a globe. Then, without warning, a dolphin slices through the center, and the sphere shudders, but holds. The fish close ranks again, drawn inward by the same instinct that doomed them moments before. As the hunt progresses, the fish weaken. Reaction time slow. The sphere loses its sharp edges, becoming uneven, lopsided. Dolphins sense this change immediately. The frequency of strikes increases. Drivers push harder. Blockers close gaps more aggressively. The structure collapses, not in an explosion, but in a gradual unraveling, as the last fish are picked off in rapid succession. When it is over, the water settles. The dolphins disperse, their movements loosening, no longer bound to the tight geometry of the hunt. Only a few scales drift in the light, the last physical trace of a highly optimized system doing exactly what it evolved to do. What remains is the realization that this was never chaos masquerading as play. It was precision disguised as fluid motion. A collective intelligence shaping the behavior of another species, using sound, movement, and instinct as tools. In the open ocean, where nothing stands still and energy is always slipping away, dolphins have learned not to outrun their prey, but to outthink it. The surface of the sea gives nothing away at first. A long, slow swell passes under a sheet of grey light, broken only by breath plumes that rise and vanish before the eye can settle on them. Then a black fin cuts the water, tall and deliberate, followed by another and another, each spaced with unnerving precision. What looks like coincidence resolves into structure. This is not a meeting. It is a formation. An orca hunt does not begin with contact. It begins with containment. Long before prey understands what it is facing, the ocean around it has already been shaped into a narrowing set of options. Escape routes shrink without obvious pressure. The water feels wrong. Sound behaves differently. The predators do not rush. They position. Orcas are not simply large predators operating at the top of the food web. They are planners. What they bring to a hunt is not just size or speed, but foresight, distributed across a group that functions as a single thinking system. Prey does not face an animal. It faces an idea. The mechanics of coordinated deletion reveal themselves slowly. A seal resting on a fragment of ice, a dolphin traveling alone, a school of fish compressed against a coastline. The orcas do not attack immediately. They circle, not in a tight ring, but in offset arcs that deny escape without triggering panic. Panic would scatter prey unpredictably. Control requires calm. When the moment comes, the strategy unfolds in layers. One orca surges forward, not to strike, but to drive movement in a specific direction. Another takes a flanking position, angled to cut off lateral escape. A third remains behind, patient, waiting for the prey to commit to a path that will later become a mistake. Each individual knows its role, not because it was assigned one in the moment, but because the pattern is learned, reinforced, and culturally transmitted over generations. This is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of orca predation. Different groups hunt differently, not as a result of environment alone, but because they inherit techniques the way humans inherit language. Some populations specialize in fish, developing rapid, high-speed pursuit tactics that rival the efficiency of tuna. Others target marine mammals, relying on endurance, manipulation of terrain, and psychological pressure. These strategies are not interchangeable. A fish-eating orca group cannot simply switch to hunting seals effectively without years of learning. Culture, not instinct alone, determines success. Nowhere is this more visible than in wave-washing behavior. When seals or sea lions haul out onto ice floes, they exploit a simple rule. Most predators cannot reach them there. Orcas rewrite that rule. Several individuals line up parallel to the ice, matching speed and spacing. With synchronized strokes of their tails, they generate a pressure wave that lifts and destabilizes the flow. The seal feels the ground move beneath it before it understands why. Another wave follows, larger, more precise. Water floods the surface. The flow tilts. The seal slides. What matters here is not the violence of the final moment, but the preparation. The waves are not random. Their amplitude, timing, and direction are controlled. One orca breaks formation at the last second to avoid collision, while another takes its place seamlessly. This choreography cannot exist without shared expectations and trust. A mistake would injure a pod member. There is no margin for error. Once prey is in the water, the hunt does not become simpler. It becomes slower. Orcas do not rush to end it. They apply herding pressure, forcing the prey to swim repeatedly, changing direction, diving and surfacing under stress. The prey's muscles burn. Its breathing becomes erratic. Heat builds. Fatigue accumulates. The weapon here is exhaustion. This strategy works because orcas are built to sustain effort where their prey cannot. Their large bodies store energy efficiently. Their oxygen management allows extended dives and repeated exertion without the sharp metabolic penalties smaller animals face. While a seal may sprint and dive frantically, an orca cruises just below maximum output, letting time erode resistance. The visual effect is chilling. Dorsal fins appear at calculated intervals, not clustered, but spaced to define a moving boundary. Wherever the prey turns, a fin is already there. Not charging, not snapping, just present. The message is clear even without sound. There is no direction that leads away. Sound, when it is used, is precise. Orcas communicate constantly, but not indiscriminately. During coordinated hunts, calls serve specific functions. Some maintain group cohesion. Others signal changes in position or initiate movement. These calls are learned dialects, distinct to each population, further reinforcing the idea that this is cultural knowledge at work. Then, at critical moments, the ocean goes quiet. Orcas are capable of deliberate silence. When stalking acoustically sensitive prey, such as seals that rely on hearing to detect danger, orcas reduce or eliminate vocalizations. They may also limit echolocation clicks, switching to passive listening. This silence is not absence, it is restraint. For prey accustomed to associating danger with noise or motion, the quiet is misleading. The water feels empty. The threat seems distant. Only when the dorsal fins surface again does the illusion collapse, often too late to respond. What distinguishes orca predation from that of other apex predators is this layering of pressure. Physical force is only one component. Psychological stress, sensory manipulation, and learned coordination all contribute to a system designed not to overpower immediately, but to degrade decision-making over time. Prey animals make errors under stress. Orcas exploit those errors with surgical timing. The rotating attacker pattern exemplifies this. Rather than allowing one individual to engage continuously, orcas take turns applying pressure. One approaches, forcing evasive action. As the prey commits to a turn, another orca intercepts, while the first disengages and recovers. This rotation maintains constant threat while conserving energy across the group. It also prevents the prey from predicting attack timing, increasing cognitive load and panic. From the prey's perspective, the threat never peaks. It never resolves into a single chase or strike. It remains everywhere and nowhere, sustained and inescapable. This prolonged uncertainty is itself a weapon. Even when targeting large prey, such as whales, orcas apply the same principles. They isolate individuals from groups, focusing on calves or weakened adults. They disrupt breathing patterns, force repeated dives, and attack extremities to limit movement. The goal is not to kill quickly, but to control the timeline of the encounter. This behavior challenges simplistic notions of predator and prey. Orcas do not simply remove individuals from ecosystems. They shape behavior across species. Seals alter haul-out habits. Whales change migration routes. Fish schools adjust depth and timing. The presence of orcas influences decisions far beyond the moment of attack. In this sense, orcas are not just predators. They are architects of fear landscapes, defining where and how other animals can exist. Their intelligence amplifies this effect because it allows adaptation faster than evolutionary change alone could achieve. As the hunt ends, the transformation is sudden. The dorsal fins drift apart. Calls resume. The tension that defined the water column dissolves. To an observer arriving late, it would be impossible to reconstruct what happened moments before. The ocean hides its histories well. What remains is an understanding that facing an orca is not about outrunning or outmaneuvering a single animal. It is about surviving a coordinated plan executed by a culture of predators that have learned, refined, and taught their strategies across generations. In the open sea, there is nothing more dangerous than an intelligence that hunts together. The sea looks empty until it suddenly is not. A column of bubbles rises from the deep like smoke escaping a submerged fire, perfectly vertical, tight-edged, and deliberate. It does not drift or disperse the way random air does. It holds its shape. Then another column appears beside it, and another, curving inward, linking into a widening spiral that wraps the water itself into a wall. Inside that invisible fence, a school of fish compresses instinctively, bodies flashing as they turn tighter and tighter, crowding together because every signal they evolve to trust is telling them that separation means death. What they do not understand is that cohesion has become the trap. Below them, far out of sight, massive shapes are rising. Humpback whales are not fast predators in the way tuna or dolphins are. They do not rely on speed to chase prey down or corner it in open water. Instead, they reshape the physics of the environment, turning water, air, sound, and instinct into a hunting structure that prey cannot interpret correctly until it is too late. Bubble net feeding begins long before the surface tells its story. One or more humpbacks descend beneath a fish school, sometimes diving tens of meters down, positioning themselves not randomly but with careful spacing. At depth, they begin to swim in widening arcs beneath the prey, exhaling streams of bubbles that rise rapidly and expand as pressure decreases. These bubbles do not form a simple cloud, they form a curtain. Fish perceive bubbles as solid barriers. The refractive index difference between air and water distorts vision, breaks up silhouettes, and creates the illusion of physical obstruction. Combined with the roar of rising air and the low-frequency vocalizations humpbacks often produce during the hunt, the effect overwhelms the prey's sensory processing. Escape routes that appear open are not trusted. Paths that look blocked feel dangerous even when they are not. As the whales swim in tightening circles, the bubble curtain closes in on itself, becoming a near-perfect cylinder. Inside, the fish crowd upward, compressing into a dense mass near the surface. Crowding is not panic. It is strategy, deeply encoded in prey behavior. Tight schools reduce individual risk when predators strike from outside. Against bubble nets, that logic fails catastrophically. From the whale's perspective, the system is elegant. Rather than chasing hundreds of fast, agile fish individually, they invest energy up front to restructure the prey into a single, manageable volume. The cost of producing bubbles and coordinating movement is far lower than the cost of repeated high-speed lunges through dispersed prey. As the bubble net reaches its final shape, roles emerge within the group. Some whales continue maintaining the bubble wall, swimming the perimeter and reinforcing weak points where fish attempt to push through. Others position themselves beneath the densest part of the school, preparing for the final phase. These roles are not rigid assignments, but learned patterns that repeat across populations, suggesting cultural transmission rather than simple instinct. The fish inside the net are now trapped by three forces at once. Bubbles form a visual and acoustic barrier. Noise from the whales disrupts lateral line sensing and communication within the school. Crowding restricts movement, reducing acceleration and turning ability. Each defense mechanism the fish rely on interferes with the others. The more tightly they pack, the worse their options become. Then the whales surge. From below, enormous mouths open, jaws spreading wider than seems mechanically possible. The throat pleats that run from the chin down the belly unfold like concertina folds, expanding outward to accommodate volumes of water that defy intuition. A single lunge can engulf tens of thousands of liters of water, along with everything suspended in it. Fish, water, and bubbles disappear into the cavernous interior of the whale in a fraction of a second. This feeding method depends on extreme biomechanical specialization. The humpback's skull, jaw joints, and throat tissues are designed to tolerate massive, rapid expansion without structural failure. Elastic connective tissue absorbs stress. Muscles control the rate of expansion to prevent injury. Once the mouth closes, the whale expels water through baleen plates, filtering fish while retaining prey with remarkable efficiency. What looks slow and cumbersome from the surface is, in fact, a precisely timed ballistic maneuver. The whale must accelerate enough to overtake the fish as they surge upward, but not so fast that it overshoots the target zone. Timing matters more than speed. The entire maneuver is calibrated to the movement of prey compressed by the bubble net. Some hunts involve a single whale. Others involve multiple individuals lunging in sequence or even side by side. In coordinated hunts, whales space their lunges to avoid collision, sometimes surfacing nearly simultaneously in a spectacle of open jaws and white throat pleats bursting through the water column. These synchronized lunges suggest awareness not only of prey position, but of each other's trajectories. The reason fish cannot escape at the final moment lies in how their nervous systems process threat. Fish react to sudden pressure changes, flashes, and movement, but bubble nets create a sensory overload that blunts directional clarity. The sound of bubbles masks the approach of the whales. The visual distortion hides precise silhouettes. By the time the fish detect the upward surge, the acceleration window required to escape no longer exists. This strategy is particularly effective against schooling species that rely on rapid, coordinated movement rather than individual decision-making. Once the school loses coherence, individuals cannot improvise fast enough. The trap does not require perfect containment. It only requires delaying reaction by fractions of a second. Humpbacks did not evolve this behavior in isolation. It exists within a broader ecological context where energy efficiency determines survival. These whales undertake some of the longest migrations of any mammal, traveling between high-latitude feeding grounds and low-latitude breeding areas. During feeding seasons, they must accumulate enormous fat reserves to sustain themselves through periods of little or no feeding. Bubble net feeding allows them to harvest dense prey efficiently, maximizing energy intake while minimizing pursuit cost. The physics of water and air do much of the work. In evolutionary terms, this is a solution that scales. Larger whales benefit more from engulfing larger volumes, reinforcing selection for size, coordination, and learned behavior. There is evidence that bubble net techniques vary between populations. Some use simple circular nets. Others employ spiral patterns. Some combine bubble release with loud feeding calls that drive fish upward more aggressively. These differences persist across generations, reinforcing the idea that humpbacks transmit hunting knowledge socially rather than rediscovering it individually each time. The visual impact of a successful hunt is unforgettable. A shimmering cylinder of bubbles reaches the surface, fish flashing frantically inside. Then the water bulges upward as a whale erupts through the center, mouth agape, pleats flared, engulfing prey in a single, unstoppable motion. Seconds later, the surface settles, bubbles collapse, and the trap dissolves, as if it never existed. For the prey, the event is incomprehensible. There is no predator to flee from in the traditional sense, no single attacker to track. Instead, the environment itself becomes hostile, turning familiar cues against them. What feels like safety becomes confinement. What feels like cohesion becomes capture. Humpback whales occupy a rare position among predators. They do not dominate through speed or stealth alone, but through environmental manipulation and collective intelligence. Their hunts reveal how large, slow-moving animals can thrive in a world where prey are small, fast, and numerous. By turning physics into a weapon, they bypass the limitations of size. In the aftermath of a feeding event, the ocean resumes its neutrality. Fish that escaped regroup at a distance. Birds circle, capitalizing on scraps near the surface. The whales descend again, already repositioning for the next opportunity. Nothing in the water betrays the complexity of what just occurred, except perhaps a few lingering bubbles drifting upward. The last trace of a living trap that existed only for moments but changed the fate of thousands. Bubble net feeding is not spectacle for its own sake. It is a demonstration of how evolution can favor cooperation, learning, and environmental control over brute force. In a medium as fluid and unforgiving as the ocean, the ability to impose structure, even briefly, is one of the most powerful survival strategies imaginable. The water ahead looks empty, an uninterrupted blue that seems to stretch forever. But this emptiness is an illusion created by scale. What appears vacant to the human eye is, in fact, thick with life, measured in millimeters rather than meters. Suspended in the water column is a living haze of krill. Thousands upon thousands of translucent bodies drifting and pulsing together. Their collective movement barely perceptible unless the light strikes them just right. In this suspended cloud, individual lives blur into biomass. It is here in this quiet abundance that the largest predator to have ever existed on Earth begins its work. The blue whale does not arrive suddenly. There is no sharp turn, no explosive burst from cover. Instead, the water darkens gradually as a massive silhouette resolves from the distance, its size difficult to process even as it fills the frame. The whale moves with deceptive ease, a body longer than most city buses gliding forward as if mass has lost its meaning. It is not hunting in the way smaller predators hunt. It is harvesting. At this scale, predation becomes a numbers game. Blue whales do not target individuals, they target density. Krill are not chased, cornered, or outmaneuvered. They are engulfed, removed from existence by the thousands in a single, decisive movement. What would qualify as a mass kill among land animals becomes routine here, repeated dozens of times a day when conditions are right. The mechanics of this feeding strategy are surprisingly direct, but no less extraordinary for their simplicity. The whale approaches a dense krill patch at cruising speed, conserving energy until the final moment. Then it accelerates, pushing its massive body forward just enough to overtake the drifting swarm. As it closes in, the mouth opens, not snapping shut but yawning outward, the lower jaw dropping as the throat pleats begin to unfurl. These pleats, running from the chin to the belly, expand like elastic walls, transforming the whale's entire underside into a temporary storage chamber. In a single lunge, the whale engulfs an enormous volume of water, along with everything suspended in it. Krill, copepods, small fish, bubbles and debris vanish into the mouth as the ocean itself seems to fold inward. This gulp is not delicate, it is not selective, it is absolute. The krill do not flee because there is no time, and even if there were, there is nowhere to go. The pressure wave generated by the whale's approach pulls water inward, drawing prey toward the mouth rather than pushing them aside. Once the mouth closes, the second phase begins. The whale slows, sometimes almost to a stop, and begins to expel water. Muscular contractions force water back out through the baleen plates that line the upper jaw. These plates, made of keratin and fringed with hair-like fibers, act as a living sieve. Water escapes. Krill do not. Trapped against the baleen curtain, they are swallowed in bulk, passing into a digestive system built to process staggering quantities of small prey. This is why krill die in such numbers. A single lunge can remove an entire micro-community in seconds. There is no individual struggle, no drawn-out chase. Mortality here is sudden and collective. For krill, survival depends not on speed or intelligence, but on being somewhere else when the whale arrives. Yet the whale cannot feed like this anywhere. Density is everything. A dispersed krill field, even one spanning kilometers, is useless. The energy required to accelerate, engulf, and filter water is enormous. If the mouthful does not contain enough biomass, the whale loses more energy than it gains. This is why blue whales are selective not about prey type, but about prey concentration. They search for patches where krill pack tightly, often driven together by ocean currents, temperature gradients, or the daily vertical migrations that bring them closer to the surface at night. This energy economics shapes every aspect of blue whale behavior. Despite their size, they live on a tight budget. Their enormous bodies require immense caloric intake, and their feeding window is limited. During productive seasons in cold, nutrient-rich waters, a blue whale must consume several tons of krill per day to build fat reserves. These reserves are not optional. They fuel migrations that span entire ocean basins and sustain the whale through long months in warmer waters where feeding opportunities are scarce or non-existent. The blue whale's annual journey is therefore written by the movement of plankton. As sunlight returns to polar and temperate regions, phytoplankton blooms explode, feeding krill populations that in turn draw whales north or south depending on hemisphere. The whales follow this moving buffet with remarkable precision, arriving at feeding grounds just as prey density peaks. When productivity wanes, they depart, not because food is gone entirely, but because it has fallen below the threshold that makes lunge feeding viable. This migration pattern reveals an important truth about scale. The largest animal on the planet survives not by dominating landscapes, but by tracking microscopic life. Its movements link distant ecosystems, transferring energy captured by phytoplankton into muscle, blubber, and eventually into the broader marine food web through waste, carcasses, and nutrient cycling. Visually, a feeding event is both subtle and overwhelming. The krill appear as a rust-colored cloud suspended in blue water, barely visible until disturbed. Then the whale passes beneath, its shadow cutting through the haze. As the lunge begins, the cloud collapses inward, drawn toward the expanding mouth. From the side, the throat pleats flare outward, turning a streamlined giant into a bloated, almost grotesque shape for a brief moment. Then the water clears, the cloud is gone, and only the whale remains, filtering the sea through its body. What makes this strategy possible is not just size, but specialization layered upon specialization. The skull is reinforced to withstand the forces generated by high-speed engulfment. The jaw joints allow extreme rotation without dislocation. The tongue, massive and muscular, helps control water flow during filtration. Even the cardiovascular system plays a role, managing blood pressure changes during repeated lunges and deep dives. Despite their immense power, blue whales are constrained by physics. They cannot feed continuously. Each lunge requires recovery time. Muscles must clear waste products. Oxygen levels must stabilize. The whale alternates between bursts of intense effort and periods of gliding rest, optimizing intake over hours rather than minutes. This rhythm shapes their daily behavior, turning feeding into a series of calculated investments rather than a frenzy. Krill, for their part, are not passive participants in this story. Their swarming behavior, while essential for reproduction and protection from smaller predators, makes them vulnerable to bulk feeders. Yet this vulnerability is part of a long-standing equilibrium. Krill reproduce rapidly, converting primary productivity into animal biomass at astonishing rates. Blue whales, despite their size, remove only a fraction of total krill populations. The system persists because loss is balanced by renewal. The presence of blue whales can even influence krill distribution. Feeding disturbances mix water layers, redistributing nutrients and altering local plankton dynamics. Whale feces, rich in iron and nitrogen, fertilize surface waters, promoting phytoplankton growth that ultimately supports more krill. In this way, the whale becomes both predator and facilitator, killing at the microscopic scale while sustaining the conditions that make such abundance possible. Seen from a distance, the blue whale's feeding looks almost serene. There is no blood in the water, no visible struggle, yet the impact is profound. Thousands of lives end in a single motion, transformed into energy that powers the slow, deliberate migration of a creature larger than any dinosaur. It is a reminder that violence in nature does not always look violent. Sometimes it looks like filtration. As the whale finishes feeding, it sinks back into the blue, its massive body shrinking with distance until it becomes a shadow once more. The krill cloud is gone, erased as if it never existed. Elsewhere, another dense patch drifts, shaped by currents and light, waiting. The whale will find it. It always does, not because it hunts harder, but because it understands the quiet arithmetic of density, timing, and scale. In the open ocean, where resources are scattered and fleeting, the blue whale survives by turning the smallest creatures into collective prey. It does not chase the sea. It lets the sea come to it, then takes everything it can hold in a single breath. The reef does not end abruptly. It frays. Hard coral gives way to broken rubble. Sand tongues slide into deeper blue, and narrow channels cut through the structure like cracks in stone. This edge is never still. Tides accelerate here. Currents twist. Schools of fish gather and break apart, drawn by food, shelter, and the false promise of escape routes. It is along these unstable borders that the tiger shark moves, not rushing, not hiding, but patrolling with the confidence of an animal that understands chaos better than anything else in the water. The tiger shark does not behave like a classic ambush predator, nor does it roam endlessly like a pelagic hunter chasing distant signals. It operates somewhere in between. Its strategy is inspection. It moves through zones that are biologically noisy, places where animals converge, overlap, and make mistakes. Reef edges, passes between islands, lagoon mouths, and deep channels all function as funnels, concentrating life in predictable ways. The tiger shark does not force opportunity. It waits for it to assemble. From a distance, its striped body blends into the blue haze, vertical bars dissolving into shadow as light scatters through water. This camouflage is not designed for invisibility in open water. It is designed for ambiguity. Prey does not immediately recognize the shape as a threat, especially in motion-blurred conditions where outlines matter more than detail. The shark glides with minimal tail movement, conserving energy, letting the environment deliver information. Unlike predators that lock onto a single target, the tiger shark is constantly scanning. Its sensory world is layered. Vision provides silhouettes and movement patterns. The lateral line detects pressure shifts caused by struggling fish or panicked bursts. Electroreceptors pick up faint bioelectric fields from muscles firing unevenly, signals that often indicate stress, injury, or distraction. Smell adds context, but rarely urgency. This shark does not sprint toward every trace of blood. It catalogs. This patrol behavior makes the tiger shark uniquely effective during moments of ecological disruption. When systems are stable, prey are alert, routes are familiar, and defenses are intact. During disruption, everything changes. Spawning events flood reefs with distracted fish releasing eggs and sperm into the water column. Seasonal migrations push exhausted animals through narrow passages. Storms reduce visibility and scatter schools. Nightfall collapses visual certainty. These are the moments the tiger shark thrives in. Reef edges and channels amplify this advantage. Fish moving between feeding and shelter zones must pass through confined spaces where currents speed up and visibility drops. The faster the water moves, the harder it becomes for prey to coordinate. Schools stretch and compress. Individuals fall out of formation. The tiger shark positions itself downstream or below, letting flow deliver prey within striking range without revealing its presence through sudden movement. Mass spawning events create particularly fertile conditions. During these events, entire populations of fish release reproductive material simultaneously, turning the water milky with gametes and chemical cues. Predators swarm to exploit the abundance, but the tiger shark is not focused on the spawning fish themselves. It watches the edges of the chaos. Smaller predators become reckless. Prey fixate on reproduction rather than vigilance. Injuries increase. Exhaustion accumulates. The tiger shark intervenes late, when mistakes are already made. This opportunism extends across prey types. Reef fish, turtles, seabirds, rays, and even weakened marine mammals may fall within its range. The shark does not specialize narrowly because it does not need to. Its feeding strategy is built around availability rather than preference. This flexibility is often misunderstood as indiscriminate feeding. In reality, it is adaptive intelligence shaped by environments where predictability is rare. Night deepens this advantage. As light fades, visual hierarchies collapse. Prey species that rely on sight lose clarity. Depth perception fails. Shadows merge. The tiger shark's sensory toolkit, less dependent on vision, gains relative power. Its striped pattern, already effective in broken light, becomes nearly invisible. Movement slows further. The patrol tightens. At night, reef edges become corridors of confusion. Fish move hesitantly. Rays rest partially buried in sand. Turtles surface to breathe, then descend again through dark water where silhouettes blur. The tiger shark does not need speed here. It needs timing, a slow approach, a sudden acceleration over a short distance, a single decisive bite. Unlike great white sharks, tiger sharks are less likely to rely on a single catastrophic strike followed by withdrawal. Their prey spectrum includes animals that cannot deliver the same level of retaliatory injury as seals. This allows more flexibility and engagement. Still, risk management remains central. The shark avoids prolonged struggle when possible, targeting angles that limit resistance and reduce the chance of damage. Physiology supports this lifestyle. Tiger sharks possess a large, energy-rich liver that provides buoyancy and acts as a metabolic reserve. This allows long patrols without frequent feeding. Their muscles are not built for sustained high-speed pursuit, but for controlled bursts and steady cruising. They do not burn energy chasing the impossible. They let opportunity mature. Thermoregulation plays a quieter role here. Tiger sharks are not as warm-bodied as great whites, but they tolerate a wide range of temperatures, enabling them to move between shallow, warm reefs and cooler offshore waters with little penalty. This thermal flexibility expands the patrol zone vertically and horizontally, increasing encounter rates with stressed or transitioning prey. The defining trait of the tiger shark is its tolerance for disorder. Where other predators rely on clean sightlines, predictable movement, or structured hunts, this shark flourishes when patterns break down. Storm runoff clouds water. Human activity alters fish behavior. Lunar cycles trigger mass movements. Each disruption introduces error, and error is what the tiger shark reads best. This role gives the tiger shark a distinct ecological function. It removes the injured, the distracted, and the poorly timed. It capitalizes on biological bottlenecks rather than creating them. By doing so, it influences how prey species use space and time, reinforcing caution around reef edges and channels. Its presence shapes movement even when it is unseen. Visually, encounters with tiger sharks often feel eerie rather than explosive. A striped shape emerges briefly behind a school of fish, then fades back into blue. A sudden shift in the school's shape hints at a strike that may not even be visible from above. Then the water resumes its rhythm, leaving only a thinning of bodies and a subtle change in behavior. This subtlety feeds misunderstanding. Tiger sharks are often portrayed as mindless opportunists, consuming anything they encounter. In reality, they are selective about conditions, not objects. They feed most successfully when ecosystems lose coherence, when multiple processes overlap and overwhelm prey defenses. Their broad diet is not recklessness. It is responsiveness. In this sense, the tiger shark is less a hunter of individuals and more a regulator of moments. It arrives when systems peak, when energy concentrates, when attention slips. It does not impose chaos. It waits for chaos to emerge, then moves through it with practiced calm. As night recedes and light returns, patrols widen again. The shark continues along the reef edge, scanning channels, following gradients of current and scent. It may not feed for days. It does not need to. Its strategy is patience embedded in motion, awareness spread across time rather than focused on a single chase. The reef, for all its color and apparent complexity, runs on narrow margins. Movement through edges and funnels carries risk. Spawning, migration, and shelter all require moments of vulnerability. The tiger shark occupies those margins, thriving not by domination, but by understanding where order breaks. In blue haze behind schooling fish, its stripes dissolve into the water, a reminder that in the ocean, survival does not always belong to the fastest or the strongest. Sometimes it belongs to the predator that understands when the rules stop holding and knows exactly how to move when everything else starts to fall apart. The sand flat looks empty from a distance, a pale expanse stretching beneath clear water, broken only by faint ripples where currents brush the bottom. Light pours down unobstructed, turning the seafloor into a bright, exposed stage. For many animals, this openness feels safe. There is nowhere to hide, but also nowhere for predators to conceal themselves. Yet this sense of security is built on a misunderstanding. What matters here is not cover, but detection. And no predator exploits open space more effectively than a hammerhead shark moving as part of a group. Hammerheads arrive without spectacle. One silhouette becomes several, wide heads cutting through the water with slow, synchronized movements. From above, their shapes look almost unreal, like tools rather than animals, each head stretched sideways into a flat plane that seems out of proportion to the body behind it. As they spread out over the sand, the geometry of the hunt begins to take shape. This is not a chase. It is a sweep. Most sharks hunt alone, relying on surprise or individual pursuit. Hammerheads break that pattern. Under the right conditions, they form schools, sometimes dozens strong, moving together over shallow flats and reef margins. Schooling changes everything. Prey that might evade a single predator by freezing, burying itself, or darting away now faces a coordinated front. Escape routes narrow. Reaction time shrinks. The open seafloor becomes a grid. This behavior is particularly effective against stingrays, one of the hammerhead's primary prey. Rays are masters of camouflage. Their flattened bodies blend seamlessly into sand, outlines softened by subtle color shifts that mirror the substrate beneath them. They rely on stillness and concealment, trusting that predators will pass overhead without noticing. Against solitary hunters, this often works. Against a line of hammerheads sweeping in formation, it fails. The key lies in sensory coverage. The hammerhead's wide, laterally extended head is not a curiosity of evolution. It is a platform. Along its leading edge sit electroreceptors capable of detecting the faint electrical fields produced by muscle contractions and nerve signals. In most sharks, these receptors cluster around the snout. In hammerheads, they are spread across a much wider area, creating a broad detection array that functions like a metal detector moving over sand. As a group of hammerheads advances, each individual scans a slightly different strip of seafloor. Overlap between these sensory fields ensures that very little escapes notice. A ray buried shallowly beneath the sand cannot remain electrically silent forever. Its gills pump. Its muscles tense. A signal leaks out, and somewhere along the advancing line, a hammerhead reacts. What happens next is not a chaotic rush, but a controlled convergence. The detecting shark adjusts course, angling inward. Nearby individuals mirror the movement, closing distance without accelerating wildly. The ray senses pressure changes and attempts to flee, lifting off the sand in a burst of motion. This is the moment the hammerheads are waiting for. Instead of pursuing from behind, the sharks fan out, cutting off lateral escape. This is where schooling predators differ fundamentally from solitary ones. A lone hammerhead might still catch the ray, but it must outmaneuver it directly. A group removes options. Wherever the ray turns, another shark is already there. The final phase is often described as boxing, though the term barely captures the precision involved. One hammerhead approaches from above, pressing the ray back toward the sand. Another moves in from the side, using its body and head to limit movement. Sometimes a shark pins the ray with its head, leveraging the wide hammer shape to hold the prey against the sea-floor. The ray's flexible body, so effective for gliding and burying, becomes a liability when trapped. Once immobilized, the outcome is inevitable. Hammerheads possess jaws and teeth well suited for gripping and dismembering rays, whose tough skin and cartilage demand force rather than slicing finesse. The struggle is brief. The sand clouds. Then it settles again, leaving only faint disturbances where the event unfolded. These hunts do not happen once and disappear. Hammerheads return to the same sand flats repeatedly. Stingrays favor these areas for feeding and resting because the shallow, sunlit bottom supports abundant invertebrate life. This predictability creates feeding grounds that hammerheads can exploit over time, revisiting zones where prey density remains high. The ecological consequences of this interaction extend beyond predator and prey. Rays are important bioturbators. As they feed, they churn the sand, uncovering buried organisms and redistributing nutrients. When ray populations grow unchecked, their foraging can dramatically alter seafloor structure, reducing habitat complexity and affecting smaller species. Hammerheads, by regulating ray numbers, indirectly maintain balance across the sandflat ecosystem. This is not a simple case of population control through fear alone. It is physical removal, repeated and targeted, shaping where and when rays choose to rest or feed. In areas where hammerheads decline, ray numbers often increase, and the seafloor shows measurable changes. Sediment compaction shifts. Invertebrate communities rearrange. The absence of a predator echoes outward. Schooling amplifies this effect. A single hammerhead removes prey occasionally. A coordinated group can clear a sand flat with efficiency that rivals terrestrial pack hunters. Yet this cooperation is subtle. There is no vocal coordination, no obvious signaling. The alignment emerges through shared movement, mutual awareness, and a common response to sensory cues. The wide head plays another role here as well. Vision. Hammerheads have eyes placed at the ends of their head extensions, giving them an expanded field of view compared to other sharks. In open environments like sandflats, this matters. A schooling hammerhead can monitor neighbors, prey, and potential competitors simultaneously, maintaining spacing without collision while tracking multiple targets. This visual awareness supports group cohesion. Individuals adjust speed and direction to remain aligned, preserving the sweep pattern. The school does not need to be tight. It needs to be coordinated. Gaps are small. Coverage remains continuous. There is a paradox at the heart of hammerhead group hunting. These sharks are often solitary in other contexts, migrating alone across open ocean, diving deep, or cruising reefs independently. Schooling appears under specific conditions, particularly when prey type and habitat favor collective action. This flexibility suggests a cognitive component. Hammerheads are not locked into a single hunting mode. They switch strategies based on context. Seasonal patterns reinforce this behavior. In certain regions, hammerheads aggregate during specific times of year, coinciding with increased ray activity or environmental conditions that concentrate prey. These gatherings may serve multiple purposes, including mating and navigation, but their feeding advantage is clear. Where rays cluster, hammerheads follow, and where hammerheads gather, the sand flats change. Visually, the scene is striking. Pale sand below, blue water above, a line of sharks moving steadily, heads swinging slightly side to side as they scan. When a ray breaks cover, the formation tightens briefly, then relaxes again as the group resumes its patrol. To an observer, the hunt might seem slow, almost methodical. To the ray, it is sudden and inescapable. This hunting style challenges the stereotype of sharks as lone, impulsive predators. Hammerheads demonstrate that cooperation in the ocean does not require rigid social bonds or constant communication. It can emerge from shared incentives and compatible sensory worlds. When individuals benefit from moving together, evolution allows the behavior to persist. The importance of this cannot be overstated. Large predators that hunt cooperatively exert stronger shaping forces on ecosystems than those acting alone. They influence not just who lives and dies, but how space is used, when animals move, and where energy flows. Hammerheads, through their group hunts, help define the character of sand-flat ecosystems across tropical and subtropical oceans. As the school moves on, the seafloor returns to stillness. Rays that escaped bury themselves deeper or relocate to less exposed areas. Smaller animals emerge cautiously, resuming their routines. The disturbance fades, but the memory lingers in altered behavior and redistributed life. Multiple hammerheads glide onward, silhouettes shrinking against the pale sand. Their wide heads continue to sweep, methodically, patiently, reading a world most predators cannot fully perceive. In this open, seemingly simple environment, they reveal a deeper truth about predation. Sometimes the greatest advantage is not speed or strength, but coverage, coordination, and the ability to turn empty space into a map of opportunity. The ocean surface gives the impression of routine. A massive body breaks through the swell, exhales in a slow, controlled plume, then drifts almost motionless, dark back rising and falling with the rhythm of the sea. To an untrained eye, the sperm whale appears to be resting. In reality, this moment at the surface is not an end or a beginning, but a checkpoint in an industrial process that runs day and night beneath the waves. What follows is not a hunt in the traditional sense, but an assembly line that links the sunlit surface to a world of permanent darkness far below. Sperm whales live between two extremes. At the surface, light defines space, sound carries far, and oxygen is abundant. Thousands of meters below, light vanishes completely. Pressure crushes unprotected tissue, and the only reliable sense left is hearing. Sperm whales move between these worlds with mechanical regularity, diving deep, feeding, returning to breathe, and repeating the cycle with little deviation. Their lives are built around vertical movement, not horizontal territory. They do not patrol coastlines or reefs, they commute. Each dive begins quietly. After a series of deep breaths that recharge oxygen stores and flush carbon dioxide from the blood, the whale arches its back and lifts its massive tail flukes clear of the water. With a slow, deliberate push, it slips beneath the surface, beginning a descent that may last over an hour. Gravity assists at first, but soon the whale angles downward, sinking into a column of water that grows darker and colder with every meter. As depth increases, the environment transforms. Sunlight fades, then disappears entirely. Temperature drops. Pressure rises to levels that would crush submarines. Yet this hostile zone is not empty. It is structured into layers, forming what biologists call a vertical ecosystem. Near the surface, plankton thrive on sunlight. Below them, small fish and crustaceans feed. Deeper still, squid dominate, rising at night and sinking by day in vast, invisible migrations. It is this moving prey layer that sperm whales target. Squid are not scattered evenly through the deep. They cluster along temperature gradients, oxygen boundaries, and current interfaces, forming transient concentrations that appear and dissolve like underwater weather systems. Finding them requires precision. Vision is useless here. The darkness is absolute. Instead, sperm whales rely on sound, projecting focused clicks into the void and listening for echoes that return from living bodies. Echolocation in the deep ocean is not a simple sonar ping. It is a continuous conversation between the whale and its environment. Each click is produced by specialized structures in the whale's enormous head, which houses a complex system of air sacs and fatty tissues that shape and amplify sound. The clicks are among the loudest biological sounds on Earth, capable of traveling vast distances through water before bouncing back as faint reflections. These echoes carry information about distance, size, texture, and movement. A squid, drifting slowly upward, produces a different acoustic signature than one jetting away in panic. By adjusting click rate and intensity, the whale builds a three-dimensional map of the darkness, tracking multiple prey items simultaneously. This sensory world is so detailed that the whale can hunt effectively in complete blackness, navigating terrain and targeting individual animals with astonishing accuracy. As the whale descends, click rates increase. The hunt has begun. Somewhere below, a squid detects pressure changes and subtle vibrations and reacts by jetting backward, expelling water through its siphon in a burst of speed. Against many predators, this would be enough. Against a sperm whale, it is a signal. The whale accelerates, not explosively but steadily, closing distance while maintaining acoustic lock. Squid cannot sustain prolonged escape at depth. Their jet propulsion is powerful but costly. Each burst consumes precious energy and oxygen. The whale, built for endurance, follows patiently, letting exhaustion do its work. When contact is made, it is sudden. The whale opens its mouth, lined with large conical teeth on the lower jaw, and seizes the squid. Arms thrash, suckers latch onto skin and bone. In some encounters, the squid fights back fiercely, wrapping tentacles around the whale's head, leaving circular scars that will remain visible for decades. These scars are not signs of weakness. They are records, physical proof of repeated battles fought and survived in the dark. A single dive may involve dozens of such encounters. The whale moves from one prey concentration to the next, consuming squid one after another, rarely stopping. Each capture feeds a body that must support immense size, a large brain, and the energetic cost of repeated deep dives. Time at depth is finite, oxygen is limited. Eventually, the balance shifts, and the whale begins its ascent. The climb back to the surface is unhurried. Buoyancy increases as pressure drops, assisting the upward movement. The whale's heart rate, which slowed dramatically during descent to conserve oxygen, gradually increases. Blood flow returns to tissues that were temporarily deprived. By the time the whale breaks the surface again, the cycle is complete. This pattern repeats continuously. Dive, feed, surface, breathe, over and over, day and night. Individually, a sperm whale is a deep-sea predator. Collectively, they form a system that extracts energy from one of the least accessible ecosystems on the planet and transports it upward, linking the abyss to the surface. Social structure makes this possible on a group level. Female sperm whales and their calves live in stable social units, traveling together and coordinating behavior. While adult females take turns diving deep to feed, others remain near the surface with the calves, forming protective circles. This is not casual babysitting, it is defense. Calves are vulnerable. They lack the oxygen capacity and muscle mass for deep dives and must remain near the surface. Here, they are exposed to predators, including orcas. When danger approaches, adult whales cluster tightly around the young, presenting a wall of massive bodies and tail flukes. This formation deters attack, buying time until diving adults return. Males, by contrast, lead more solitary lives, roaming vast distances and diving even deeper than females. Their scars are often more extensive, evidence of encounters with larger, more aggressive squid species in deeper waters. These males function as mobile harvesters, extracting prey from depths few other animals can reach. The deep ocean assembly line operates not just through individual effort, but through this division of roles. Some whales feed, others protect. The system persists because it distributes risk and labor across the group, ensuring that young survive long enough to join the cycle themselves. The ecological impact of this behavior is immense. Squid are major predators of fish and invertebrates. By controlling squid populations, sperm whales indirectly influence the structure of mid-water ecosystems. Their waste products, released at the surface after feeding at depth, recycle nutrients upward, fertilizing plankton and fueling productivity. Like other great whales, sperm whales act as vertical nutrient pumps, moving energy against gravity. Visually, the deep-sea hunt leaves few traces. There is no blood cloud, no scattered debris. The evidence emerges slowly, in the form of scars etched into grey skin, each ring a memory of suction cups gripping flesh in the dark. These marks accumulate over decades, turning the whale's body into a living archive of its hunting history. Occasionally, the surface betrays the scale of what lies beneath. Bubbles rise from unseen depths, carried upward by trapped air released during feeding. A massive square head emerges briefly, water cascading off its surface, eyes barely visible. Then the whale exhales, inhales, and prepares to disappear again. The darkness below is not a void. It is an ecosystem built on motion, sound, and repetition. Sperm whales have mastered it not through speed or stealth, but through endurance, sensory specialization, and social organization. They do not conquer the deep. They integrate with it, moving through its layers like a slow, unstoppable mechanism. In a world without light, they have replaced sight with sound. In a place where food is scattered and fleeting, they have turned routine into survival. Each dive is a calculated risk. Each scar is a testament to persistence. And each return to the surface resets a process that has been running for millions of years, quietly, relentlessly, far below where sunlight ever reaches. The beach looks peaceful from a distance. Pale sand stretches toward the horizon, smoothed by wind and tide, broken only by faint tracks that crisscross like handwriting. The sea beyond it breathes slowly, untroubled, giving no hint of urgency. But this calm is misleading. What unfolds here again and again is one of the most concentrated mass events in the natural world, and the green sea turtle stands at its center, not as a killer, but as the catalyst around which killing gathers. Green sea turtles are not predators in the dramatic sense. They do not chase, ambush, or tear apart prey. As adults, they are largely herbivores, grazing patiently on seagrass meadows and algae-covered reefs, shaping ecosystems through consumption rather than violence. Yet their life cycle creates moments of extraordinary vulnerability, moments so dense with opportunity that entire predator communities synchronize around them. Where turtles gather, death follows, even if the turtles themselves never deliver it. The first of these moments begins far from land, deep in open ocean, where adult green sea turtles converge during migration. These journeys span vast distances, guided by navigation systems still not fully understood, likely combining Earth's magnetic field, celestial cues, and memory imprinted early in life. Hundreds or thousands of individuals funnel along similar routes, moving from feeding grounds to nesting beaches with remarkable precision. For predators, these migrations act like moving corridors of biomass, predictable in timing and direction. Sharks shadow these routes. Large fish patrol beneath. Even human fishing activity has historically followed them. But the most intense concentration happens at the end of the journey, when turtles haul themselves onto land. Nesting is slow, exhausting work. An adult female drags her heavy body across sand that offers no buoyancy, using flippers designed for water to crawl forward inch by inch. Each movement costs energy. Each pause leaves her exposed. On the beach, she digs a nest chamber with careful, repetitive motions, deposits dozens of eggs, covers them, and returns to the sea. This process can take hours. During that time, the turtle is nearly defenseless. Historically, large terrestrial predators exploited this. Jaguars, on certain beaches, learned to ambush nesting females, flipping them onto their backs to access soft tissue. Humans did the same, harvesting turtles by the thousands. Even without these pressures, The nesting event itself creates a concentration of scent, sound, and movement that draws scavengers and opportunists to the shoreline. But the most dramatic gauntlet comes later. Weeks after nesting, often under cover of darkness, the sand begins to move. Hatchlings emerge in bursts, dozens at a time, clawing upward toward the surface. The moment they break free, the race begins. Guided by the brightness of the open horizon, they scramble toward the water, tiny bodies propelled by instinct older than memory. This is where the illusion of innocence collapses. Everything eats the babies. Birds wait along the dunes, their silhouettes barely visible until movement betrays the hatchlings. Crabs swarm from burrows, seizing legs and flipping bodies. Mammals dig into nests before emergence even begins. Once the hatchlings reach the surf, fish erupt from below. Larger fish chase smaller ones. Squids strike from shadow. Seabirds plunge from above. Even the waves themselves separate and disorient the young turtles, scattering them into the feeding lanes of predators already waiting. This is not random predation. It is synchronized exploitation. Predators time their presence to these events. They learn the season. They learn the beach. The arrival of hatchlings represents a sudden, overwhelming pulse of food, far more than any predator could consume alone. Survival here is not about strength or speed. It is about probability. When hundreds emerge, a few will slip through simply because predators cannot catch them all at once. The numbers are brutal. Only a small fraction of hatchlings will survive their first day. Fewer still will reach adulthood. But those odds are not a failure of the system. They are the system. This mass vulnerability feeds entire coastal food webs. It sustains birds during breeding seasons, fish during lean periods, and scavengers that rely on predictable pulses of energy. The green sea turtle does not choose this role, but evolution has locked it into a strategy where overwhelming reproduction offsets overwhelming loss. Those that survive enter a different phase of danger. Juvenile turtles drift in oceanic currents, often associating with floating debris or sargassum mats that provide shelter and food. Here too, predators patrol. Fish strike from below. Birds attack from above. The turtles grow slowly, incrementally, each increase in size reducing the range of predators capable of killing them. By adulthood, the balance shifts dramatically. An adult green sea turtle is a formidable presence. Its shell is thick, domed, and resistant to crushing. Its size alone discourages many predators. Its endurance allows it to travel long distances without feeding, diving repeatedly and holding breath for extended periods. Few animals can overpower a healthy adult turtle outright. Even so, predators adapt. Large sharks target flippers, disabling movement rather than attempting to breach the shell. Orcas, in rare cases, flip turtles to access softer undersides. But these attacks are difficult, risky, and far less common than hatchling predation. For most of their adult lives, green sea turtles are not victims. They are engineers. Their grazing behavior shapes entire ecosystems. In seagrass meadows, green sea turtles crop blades short, preventing overgrowth and encouraging new, nutrient-rich shoots. This grazing maintains meadow health, improves oxygen flow, and supports diverse invertebrate communities. Without turtles, seagrass can grow tall and dense, trapping sediment and reducing productivity. On reefs, turtles consume algae that would otherwise smother coral. By doing so, they create space for coral larvae to settle and grow. The presence or absence of turtles can determine whether a reef thrives or collapses under algal dominance. Their feeding is slow, repetitive, and precise, an herbivore's version of habitat management. This makes the earlier mass-killing events even more consequential. The predators that feed on turtle hatchlings are not just killing turtles, they are indirectly shaping future seagrass beds and reefs. A year with high hatchling survival can echo decades later in healthier coastal ecosystems. A year of heavy loss can weaken those systems long after the beach has gone quiet again. The green sea turtle thus exists at the intersection of vulnerability and resilience. Its life begins in one of the most lethal environments imaginable, surrounded by enemies at every scale. It survives not by fighting, but by flooding the system with opportunity. Later, it becomes a stabilizing force, reducing chaos rather than creating it. This contrast is the curveball. In a world obsessed with predators, the green sea turtle demonstrates how mass events do not belong exclusively to hunters. Prey can generate them too, and when they do, predators gather. The turtle's migrations, nestings, and hatchling emergencies create predictable windows where life concentrates and death accelerates. These moments are not accidents. They are structural features of the ecosystem, timing mechanisms that synchronize energy transfer across species. From a distance, the turtle gliding over bright sand looks serene, almost timeless. Its movements are unhurried. Its eyes appear calm. But around it, unseen silhouettes track, wait, and prepare. Sharks cruise deeper water. Fish linger at reef edges. Birds circle overhead. The turtle's presence shapes their behavior even when no attack occurs. This is why turtles matter beyond their own survival. They anchor food webs in time. They create pulses. They link beach to ocean, predator to plant, past to future. When turtles disappear, these rhythms unravel. Predators lose predictable food. Seagrass loses its gardener. Reefs lose a line of defense. And when turtles gather, everything pays attention. The final tension lies here. Mass events do not exist in isolation. Every large gathering of life creates an opportunity for death. Predators do not need to invent new strategies. They only need to arrive on time. In the ocean, no species lives alone. Even the most peaceful grazer can become the center of a killing field simply by moving, nesting, or being born in large numbers. The green sea turtle carries this paradox through its entire life, from frantic dash across sand to slow, deliberate grazing on the sea floor. As silhouettes fade into the blue beyond the beach, the lesson lingers. In nature, mass does not belong to one side of the hunt. Where life gathers, death gathers too. And in the next story, we follow the predators who have learned to read these gatherings perfectly, turning someone else's survival strategy into their own killing opportunity. The river does not announce where it ends. Fresh water bleeds into salt without ceremony, turning blue into brown, clarity into haze. Sediment hangs suspended, light fractures early, and sound behaves strangely, bending and dulling as currents collide. To many animals, this boundary feels dangerous and confusing. To a bull shark, it feels like opportunity concentrated into a narrow strip of water. River mouths are not just places where water types mix. They are traffic zones. Fish move through them daily, migrating between feeding grounds, spawning sites and shelter. Nutrients wash downstream, attracting plankton, which draw baitfish, which in turn pull in larger predators. Everything funnels through the same few channels. Movement accelerates. Density rises. Mistakes become inevitable. The bull shark does not need to chase prey across open ocean when geography delivers it in compressed waves. In these zones, visibility collapses. Silt, tannins, and organic debris stain the water, reducing sight to a few body lengths or less. For prey that rely on vision to detect danger, this is catastrophic. Shapes lose definition. Distances blur. A predator can be close without being seen. The bull shark thrives here not because it is invisible, but because it does not need to be seen until the moment of contact. Unlike sharks that depend on clean water and clear silhouettes, the bull shark's sensory world is built for ambiguity. Its lateral line reads pressure changes from struggling fish or sudden turns. Its electroreceptors detect muscle activity even when eyes fail. Smell adds context, but in fast-moving river mouths, it is the vibration and electrical noise of panicked prey that matters most. The shark glides through turbidity with confidence, reading a map that prey cannot see. This ability expands its hunting territory dramatically. Bull sharks are among the few large predators capable of tolerating wide swings in salinity. Their physiology allows them to move seamlessly from full salt water into brackish estuaries and far upriver into freshwater systems. Specialized kidneys and hormonal controls manage internal salt balance, preventing dehydration in the ocean and overhydration in rivers. Where other sharks are confined by chemistry, bull sharks roam freely. That freedom turns rivers into extensions of the sea. Fish that would be safe from ocean predators deep inland suddenly face a hunter built to follow them. River mouths become staging areas where prey from multiple ecosystems overlap, increasing diversity and abundance. The bull shark patrols these interfaces, capitalizing on the confusion created when marine and freshwater species share space. The hunting strategy here is not speed, nor stealth in the traditional sense. It is pressure. The shark applies slow, steady movement to push prey in specific directions. Fish instinctively flee toward shallower water, believing proximity to land offers escape. Instead, depth drops quickly, maneuvering space vanishes, and escape angles collapse. The bull shark does not rush. It lets the environment do the work. Shallows amplify this effect. As water thins, fish cannot dive. Their vertical options disappear. Sudden turns throw them into sandbanks, submerged roots, or shoreline debris. Each collision costs energy and coordination. The shark's body, thick and muscular, is built for this environment. It tolerates bumps, low depth, and uneven terrain without hesitation. In these moments, prey do not face a single attacker. They face a narrowing map. The bull shark turns bends, banks, and gradients into tools. By positioning itself between deeper water and the shoreline, it cuts off retreat. By advancing slowly, it keeps prey moving without triggering full panic that might scatter them unpredictably. This controlled pressure increases the chance that an individual will break away, stall, or misjudge a turn. When the strike comes, it is sudden but not dramatic. There is no breach, no explosion of water. In murky conditions, attacks are close range, forceful, and decisive. The shark's broad head and powerful jaws deliver crushing bites designed to incapacitate rather than slice. In low visibility, precision matters less than certainty. Contact is enough. River mouths also create temporal patterns. Tides push fish in and out on predictable schedules. Rainfall increases runoff, carrying nutrients and drawing prey closer to shore. Seasonal migrations align with spawning cycles upriver. The bull shark learns these rhythms. It does not need constant success. It needs reliable repetition. This is where its reputation as aggressive or unpredictable often comes from. In reality, the shark is responding to density and movement, not targeting indiscriminately. Where many animals move through narrow spaces under poor visibility, encounters increase. The bull shark is not more reckless than other predators. It is simply operating where overlap is unavoidable. The ecological role of this behavior is significant. By hunting at river mouths, bull sharks influence which species move when, how long they linger, and where they cross. Prey alter timing to avoid peak predator presence. Some species delay entry into estuaries. Others move in tighter schools. These behavioral changes ripple outward, affecting nutrient flow, spawning success, and food availability upstream and along the coast. The bull shark's tolerance for varied water conditions also means it can exploit human-altered environments. Dams, dredging, and runoff change current patterns and visibility, often increasing bottlenecks. Fish displaced by habitat disruption concentrate in fewer passages. The shark adapts quickly, incorporating new structures into its patrol routes. It does not need pristine ecosystems to function. It needs movement. Physiologically, the bull shark is built for this role. Its body is compact and muscular, providing strong acceleration over short distances rather than sustained speed. Its large pectoral fins offer stability in turbulent water. Its thick skin resists abrasion from debris. Everything about its form suggests a predator comfortable with contact, turbulence, and unpredictability. Thermal tolerance adds another layer. Rivers and estuaries can be warmer than offshore waters, especially in tropical and subtropical regions. The bull shark handles these temperature shifts with little penalty, remaining active where other large predators slow down. This thermal flexibility increases feeding windows and expands territory further inland. Visually, encounters with bull sharks in these environments feel unsettling rather than spectacular. A shadow materializes briefly in brown-blue water. Fish scatter suddenly, directionless. Then the shadow vanishes again into turbidity. The attack itself may never be seen, only inferred by the abrupt absence of movement where a school once passed. This invisibility fuels fear, but it also highlights the shark's core strategy. The bull shark does not dominate open ocean through speed or elegance. It dominates edges. It exploits transitions, overlaps, and blind spots created by geography itself. Rivers, estuaries, and deltas are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. They are also among the most crowded. By weaponizing these crowd zones, bull sharks insert themselves into the flow of energy moving between land and sea. They are not visitors here. They are residents of the boundary. As currents shift and tides turn, the shark continues its patrol, moving with the rhythm of water rather than against it. It does not need to rush. Somewhere ahead, fish will funnel again, visibility will drop, and space will tighten. Geography will compress life into reachable form. In these murky corridors, survival belongs to the predator that understands terrain. The bull shark does not rely on surprise alone. It relies on knowing where movement must pass, where confusion peaks, and where escape collapses. In the end, its greatest weapon is not its bite, but its mastery of the places where ecosystems collide and rules break down. The coastline looks peaceful from a distance. Cold water rolls toward shore in steady pulses, breaking into white lines against rock and sand. Offshore, the surface gives no hint of danger, no disturbance beyond wind and swell. Yet beneath this apparent calm lies one of the most predictable killing fields in the ocean, a place where geography, biology, and behavior align so reliably that predators return year after year, following routes etched not into maps, but into instinct. Seal colonies are the engine of this system. Where seals haul out to rest, breed, and raise their young, energy accumulates in a concentrated, vulnerable form. Fat-rich bodies enter the water repeatedly, following the same paths between land and sea, day after day. For a great white shark, this is not opportunity by chance. It is a scheduled event. Great white sharks do not patrol endlessly in search of random prey. That would be wasteful. Instead, they specialize in hotspots, locations where prey behavior creates repeatable conditions. Seal colonies provide exactly that. The seals must swim through narrow corridors of water as they leave shore, crossing depth changes and current boundaries that force predictable movement. Over time, these routes become ambush lanes. Below the surface, the shark positions itself with patience that contradicts its reputation. It does not circle wildly or rush the shallows. It waits deep, often motionless, using the slope of the seabed and the angle of the light to its advantage. From below, the seal appears as a dark silhouette against the bright surface, an unmistakable target. From above, the shark is invisible. This vertical separation is critical. The great white is built for upward attack. Its powerful tail and rigid body allow explosive acceleration over short distances, converting stored energy into a sudden vertical burst. When the moment arrives, the shark does not test the seal, does not probe or harass. It commits fully. The strike is over almost before it registers. A column of white water erupts as the shark breaches the surface, jaws open, body twisting slightly to maximize impact. Teeth meet flesh, and momentum carries both predator and prey clear of the water for an instant, before gravity pulls them back into the sea. Then, just as suddenly, everything stops. The surface calms. Ripples spread and fade. There is no prolonged struggle, no visible chaos. This abrupt transition from violence to stillness is deceptive. Below, the outcome is still unfolding. Great white sharks often release their prey after the initial strike. This behavior has been misunderstood as indecision or even mercy. In reality, it is risk management. Seals are strong, agile animals with sharp claws and powerful jaws. A prolonged struggle increases the chance of injury, and injury for a shark can be fatal. Teeth broken, eyes damaged, fins torn. A single mistake can mean starvation. By striking once with maximum force, the shark delivers catastrophic damage while minimizing contact time. The seal's body floods with shock and blood loss. Even if it escapes momentarily, its chances of survival drop sharply. The shark withdraws, tracking the prey with sensory systems tuned to weakness rather than motion. Blood disperses slowly in cold water, carrying chemical signals that sharks detect from remarkable distances. But smell alone is not the guide. Vibrations change. Movements become erratic. Electrical signals weaken as muscles fail. The shark circles at a distance, conserving energy, waiting for the prey to exhaust itself. When the seal finally succumbs, the nature of the feeding event changes. What began as a precise ambush becomes a communal opportunity. A single carcass represents an enormous energy package, rich in fat and protein, far more than one shark can consume at once. Other sharks arrive, drawn by scent and movement, sometimes from many kilometers away. This is the scavenger phase, and it reveals a different side of great white behavior. Multiple sharks may feed on the same carcass, not in a frenzy, but in a loosely organized sequence. Dominance is established through size, posture, and subtle displays rather than constant aggression. Larger individuals take priority. Smaller ones wait, circling patiently, conserving energy until their turn comes. This system reduces conflict. Fighting over food wastes energy and risks injury. By tolerating shared access, sharks maximize the return on a rare, high-value resource. One kill feeds many, spreading the benefit across the population. The presence of multiple sharks also changes the dynamics of the site itself. Seals sense danger more acutely. Their haul-out behavior shifts. They may delay entering the water, choose different exit points, or alter timing. These changes ripple outward, affecting everything from nutrient input to shoreline ecosystems. The sharks do not just remove individuals, they reshape behavior. From an ecological perspective, these feeding hotspots function as pressure points. Energy flows from seals into sharks, but also into scavengers that feed on scraps, into microbes that break down remains, and into nutrient cycles that fertilize nearby waters. The event does not end with consumption. It cascades. The great white's body is tuned for this role. Its large liver, rich in oil, provides buoyancy and energy storage. Its muscles generate rapid acceleration, but only for short bursts. Unlike tuna or dolphins, great whites are not built for sustained high-speed pursuit. They do not need to be. Their strategy relies on timing, positioning, and surprise. Thermoregulation plays a subtle but important role. Great whites maintain warmer muscles and internal organs than the surrounding water, giving them a performance edge in cold coastal environments. This warmth improves reaction speed and power output during the critical moments of the ambush. It also allows sharks to exploit colder waters where seals thrive, expanding their effective hunting range. Despite their power, great whites are cautious animals. They do not attack indiscriminately. They sample unfamiliar objects, investigate from a distance, and abort attacks if conditions are unfavorable. This caution is often misinterpreted as hesitation. In reality, it reflects a finely tuned cost-benefit analysis shaped by millions of years of selection. Injury is the ultimate limiter. A shark that loses a tooth can replace it. A shark that loses vision in one eye or sustains deep tissue damage may not survive. This is why strikes are calculated, why ambush lanes are chosen carefully, and why sharks withdraw after initial contact. The goal is not dominance. It is survival. Visually, the feeding event leaves a strong impression precisely because it is so brief. A sudden eruption of water and spray, a flash of white belly and dark back, then silence. For observers, the mind struggles to reconcile the violence of the moment with the calm that follows. This contrast fuels myths and exaggeration, obscuring the underlying precision of the behavior. When the carcass is finally consumed or sinks beyond reach, the sharks disperse. Some remain in the area, anticipating future opportunities. Others move on, following coastlines or currents toward the next predictable hotspot. The cycle continues, tied not to individual prey, but to places where biology and geography intersect. Great white sharks do not roam aimlessly through the ocean as mindless killers. They are specialists in exploiting repeatable conditions, using intelligence, sensory acuity, and restraint to harvest high-energy prey efficiently. Their presence at seal colonies is not accidental. It is the result of evolutionary alignment between predator and prey, played out again and again along the same stretches of coast. In the end, the most unsettling aspect of great white predation is not its violence, but its order. The ocean does not descend into chaos when a shark strikes. It follows a script written by energy flow and risk management. A burst, a pause, a gathering, then calm. From the surface, nothing remains to mark the event. The water smooths itself, waves resume their rhythm, and the coastline returns to silence. Beneath, the sharks move on, carrying with them the energy of a single life distributed across many bodies, reinforcing a system that depends not on constant killing, but on knowing exactly when and where to strike. The river feels crowded long before anything breaks the surface. Water presses against itself in slow, heavy layers, thick with sediment and heat, carrying the smell of decay, algae, and stress. Visibility collapses to arm's length. Sound dulls. Movement becomes unpredictable. This is not the clear, flowing image of a tropical river in balance. This is a system under pressure, and pressure is what piranhas understand best. Piranhas do not live in a constant state of frenzy. Most of the time they move cautiously, even nervously, schooling tightly, responding to shadows and vibrations with sudden synchronized turns. In stable conditions, they feed opportunistically on insects, fruit, carrion, and small fish, often avoiding direct confrontation with anything that might fight back. Their reputation as unstoppable killers is a distortion born from rare moments, not daily reality. But when conditions align, when stress accumulates faster than escape options, the river rewrites its rules. Those conditions arrive with predictability in seasonal cycles. As water levels drop during dry periods, space compresses. Channels narrow. Floodplains retreat. Fish that once spread across kilometers of submerged forest are forced back into shrinking pools and exposed channels. Oxygen levels fluctuate. Competition intensifies. Injuries increase. Every movement sends pressure waves through water already crowded with life. This is when piranhas change. The shift is not announced by a single act of aggression. It begins with density. Schools tighten, bodies brushing, lateral lines firing constantly as each fish reads the movement of its neighbors. In this compressed state, individual restraint weakens. A sudden splash, a struggling animal, a burst of blood from an injury becomes amplified by proximity. What would be ignored in open water becomes impossible to overlook. The first bite is rarely fatal. It is diagnostic. Piranha teeth are not designed for tearing flesh in long struggles. They are triangular, razor-edged, and arranged to meet perfectly when the jaws snap shut. The bite is fast, precise, and surgical. A single strike removes a chunk of flesh, a fin, a scale patch. It creates damage without commitment. The attacker pulls back instantly, avoiding retaliation. This bite changes the chemistry and physics of the water. Blood disperses. Pressure waves alter as the wounded animal struggles. Electrical signals spike erratically as muscles misfire. The prey is not yet dead, but it is no longer intact. Weakness has been introduced into the system. That weakness propagates. Other piranhas detect the change not as hunger, but as opportunity. They do not rush blindly. They surge forward in short bursts, biting and retreating, each strike compounding the damage. Flesh loss increases drag. Drag slows movement. Slower movement creates more pressure disturbance. More disturbance attracts more attackers. This is the cascade. The school's behavior during these moments is not random chaos. It is containment through pressure. Piranhas do not surround prey in a perfect ring. Instead, they maintain a shifting boundary, reacting instantly to escape attempts. When the wounded animal tries to bolt, it collides with opposing pressure waves from the school. Turns become sloppy. Acceleration fails. The prey remains trapped not by walls, but by constantly adjusting resistance. What makes this especially effective is the prey's own panic. Rapid, uncoordinated movements amplify detection cues. Every kick broadcasts location. Every turn increases visibility. The river becomes loud in a way only predators can interpret. Yet even now, restraint exists. Piranhas avoid biting simultaneously in the same spot. They attack from different angles, minimizing interference and injury. Despite the frenzy implied by popular myth, there is no mindless pylon. There is efficiency born from evolution in crowded, dangerous environments where injury is costly. The feeding event escalates quickly once it begins, but it ends just as fast. When the prey collapses or is stripped beyond recognition, the stimulus disappears. Pressure normalizes. Chemical cues dissipate. The school pulls back almost immediately, reforming into a tight, cautious unit. The river does not boil indefinitely. It spikes, then settles. This is why the myth fails. Observers see the spike and mistake it for the baseline. Environmental stress is the true trigger. Low water concentrates life. High temperature lowers oxygen. Competition sharpens behavior. In these moments, piranhas shift from cautious omnivores into rapid response predators optimized for exploiting weakness. Remove the stress, and the behavior dissolves. This strategy has deep ecological implications. During harsh seasons, piranhas act as regulators, removing injured, sick, or poorly timed animals that cannot cope with the compressed environment. They recycle biomass rapidly, preventing prolonged suffering and reducing disease spread in overcrowded pools. Their brutality is not wasteful. It is corrective. The school itself functions as both defense and offense. Outside feeding events, tight schooling protects individual piranhas from larger predators. Inside feeding events, the same cohesion becomes a hunting tool. Pressure waves that once warned of danger now enforce containment. The same sensory network switches roles seamlessly. Physiologically, piranhas are built for this duality. Their bodies are compact and muscular, allowing quick bursts rather than sustained pursuit. Their jaw muscles generate extreme force relative to size, but only over short durations. Their nervous systems prioritize rapid response to vibration and pressure changes, making them exquisitely sensitive to instability in the water. Vision plays a secondary role. In the turbid rivers they inhabit, sight is unreliable. Instead, piranhas rely on lateral line systems that detect minute changes in flow. A struggling animal creates chaos in the water column that cannot be hidden. In this sense, panic itself becomes visible. School size amplifies this effect. A larger group increases sensory coverage and reaction speed. When one individual reacts, others follow almost instantly, not because of communication, but because the physical disturbance spreads through the school. This creates the impression of instantaneous coordination, when in reality it is physics moving through bodies. There is irony here. The same crowding that triggers feeding frenzies also makes piranhas more nervous and cautious the rest of the time. They flinch at shadows. They scatter from sudden movement. They hesitate around large animals. The river teaches them that confidence is expensive. Human encounters with piranhas often occur during these stress windows. Low water, high heat, limited escape routes, wounded animals entering the river. The fish are not aggressive by default. They are responding to a system under strain. Remove the strain and the danger recedes. Visually, a true feeding event is unmistakable. Red-tinted bodies flash through murky water. Sediment erupts. The surface churns briefly, then calms. What remains is silence and fragments drifting slowly downward. The violence feels disproportionate to the size of the animals involved, which is precisely why it leaves such a strong impression. But these moments are punctuation marks, not paragraphs. Most days, piranhas move through the river as part of a complex, cautious web of life, navigating predators above them and competition around them. They eat fruit that falls from trees. They scavenge leftovers. They wait. When the river contracts and stress peaks, they become something else entirely. Not because they are monsters, but because the environment demands efficiency. Understanding piranhas means understanding conditions, not character. They are not defined by frenzy, but by responsiveness. They do not create chaos. They exploit it. In rivers shaped by seasonal extremes, survival belongs to animals that can switch roles quickly, shifting from restraint to brutality without hesitation. Piranhas have mastered that switch. When water shrinks and tension rises, they turn crowding into a weapon, panic into a signal, and weakness into a resource. Then, as the river expands again and pressure releases, they fade back into the background, red bodies dissolving into brown water, waiting for the next moment when the ecosystem tightens and reminds everything living in it how fragile stability really is. The shoreline breathes in cycles. Water retreats, exposing rock and sand that moments ago belonged to the sea, then returns again to erase the boundary. In the brief window between these movements, the intertidal zone becomes a place of reckoning. Fish stranded in shallow pools, mollusks torn from their holdfasts, carcasses carried in by waves and left behind by the falling tide, all share the same vulnerability. They are alive, or recently so, but no longer mobile. This is when the crabs arrive. At first there are only a few. A movement from beneath a stone. A pair of eyes rising above the sand. Then another and another, emerging from crevices, burrows, and shadowed cracks in the rock. What looks like coincidence resolves into pattern as dozens of hard shells converge on the same point. Crabs are not drawn by drama. They are drawn by opportunity, and the intertidal zone produces it with metronomic reliability. Crabs are not hunters in the classical sense. They do not chase down prey across open ground or ambush with sudden speed. Their strength lies in accumulation. When food becomes immobilized, stranded by tide or injured by waves, crabs transform from background scavengers into a coordinated cleanup force. The transition is quiet. There is no frenzy, no sudden explosion of motion. There is simply an increase in density, a steady closing in from all directions. The prey, whether fish, bird, or marine invertebrate, is not overwhelmed by a single decisive act. It is overwhelmed by numbers. Each crab takes a small piece, applies pressure, tests resistance. Claws grip, pull, and tear. Not with rage, but with mechanical persistence. Movement slows, then stops. The process is relentless precisely because it is incremental. This is the slow death angle, stripped of spectacle. No dramatic strike ends the struggle. Instead, resistance is eroded through repetition. A fin is held. A limb is pinned. Soft tissue is exposed where shells or scales fail. The prey does not face an enemy it can intimidate or escape. It faces arithmetic. The mechanics that make this possible are deceptively simple. A crab's claw is not just a grasping tool. It is a lever system, with muscles arranged to maximize force over short distances. One claw often specializes in crushing, capable of cracking shells or bones, while the other handles finer manipulation, tearing flesh or holding prey in place. This division of labor allows crabs to dismantle animals larger and stronger than any individual crab could manage alone. Leverage matters more than speed here. By anchoring their bodies against rock or sand, crabs convert their own weight into resistance, amplifying the force applied by the claw. Prey that thrashes only increases the effectiveness of this system, pulling itself against multiple points of contact. Every movement creates new purchase for another claw. Opportunism defines when this behavior peaks. Low tide exposes animals that rely on water for buoyancy and escape. Fishing traps abandoned or lost at sea concentrate bait and bycatch into confined spaces. Storms damage reefs and seagrass beds, dislodging animals that cannot reattach quickly. In each case, crabs do not create vulnerability. They recognize it. The intertidal zone is especially suited to this role. It is a place of extremes, alternating between immersion and exposure, abundance and scarcity. Animals that live here evolved to tolerate stress, but even tolerance has limits. When those limits are crossed, crabs are waiting. What makes this dynamic ecologically important is not just consumption, but speed. Carcasses in warm, shallow environments decay rapidly, fueling bacterial blooms that deplete oxygen and spread disease. By stripping organic matter quickly, crabs prevent nutrient waste and reduce the risk of localized ecological collapse. They turn death into resource with efficiency that few vertebrates can match. This recycling role extends beyond obvious carcasses. Crabs feed on plant matter, detritus and biofilms, breaking down material that would otherwise accumulate. Their feeding activity stirs sediment, redistributing nutrients and oxygenating the substrate. In doing so, they influence which organisms can colonize an area and how energy moves through the system. The visual impact of a crab feeding event is unmistakable. Dozens of bodies cluster around a single target, legs overlapping, shells knocking softly against one another. There is movement everywhere, but no chaos. Each crab focuses on its immediate task, pulling, tearing, repositioning. The mass shifts slowly as access points change. From above, it resembles a living carpet, creeping and folding over itself. Despite the density, conflict is minimal. Crabs do not fight over food unless space becomes critically limited. The resource is shared because it is abundant relative to individual needs, and because fighting would waste energy better spent feeding. This tolerance is not altruism. It is efficiency shaped by natural selection. Sensory systems play a subtle role in coordinating this behavior. Crabs detect chemical cues released by injured or decaying tissue, drawing them from a distance. As more individuals arrive, pressure waves and vibrations signal activity to others hidden nearby. The aggregation grows not through planning, but through layered responses to the same stimuli. The prey's perspective is defined by inevitability rather than terror. Movement becomes harder as limbs are restrained from multiple angles. Attempts to escape are redirected by the mass. Even large animals capable of injuring a single crab cannot fend off dozens without sustaining damage that only accelerates the process. Exhaustion sets in. The tide continues its schedule, indifferent. This method of consumption challenges the idea that predators must be fast or intelligent to be effective. Crabs succeed by being present in the right place at the right time, equipped with tools that reward patience. Their strategy is ancient, refined over millions of years in environments where unpredictability is constant. Crabs also influence the behavior of other scavengers. Birds time their foraging to coincide with crab activity, stealing scraps or targeting exposed prey before crabs arrive in full force. Fish patrol tide pools cautiously, aware that becoming stranded means joining the next cleanup. Even larger predators adjust patterns in response to crab density, avoiding areas where competition reduces payoff. In this way, crabs function as ecological anchors. They do not dominate food webs through size or aggression, but through reliability. When something dies, they will find it. When something is trapped, they will exploit it. Their presence closes loops that might otherwise remain open, preventing energy from stagnating. Mechanical advantage underpins all of this. Claws do not tire the way jaws do. Muscles designed for short, powerful contractions can repeat their work for extended periods without catastrophic fatigue. A crab can feed, rest briefly, then feed again, maintaining pressure long after more energetically expensive predators would have moved on. This endurance allows crab aggregations to persist until little remains. Bones, shells, and resistant tissues are left behind, but even these may be revisited as conditions change. What is not consumed becomes substrate for algae or habitat for smaller organisms. Nothing is truly wasted. There is a quiet irony in how unassuming this process appears. To a casual observer, crabs seem slow, even clumsy, moving sideways across rocks with awkward gait. Yet in aggregate, they are among the most effective recyclers in coastal ecosystems. Their strength lies not in individual prowess, but in collective persistence. The intertidal zone depends on this. Without rapid cleanup, stranded biomass would rot, altering water chemistry and destabilizing communities already under stress from fluctuating conditions. Crabs act as buffers, absorbing shocks and redistributing energy in forms other organisms can use. As the tide begins to rise again, the aggregation loosens. Water returns, lifting shells and easing movement. Some crabs retreat to burrows or crevices. Others continue feeding until the last scraps are gone. The scene dissolves as quietly as it formed, leaving behind only disturbed sand and fragments that will soon be colonized by life again. What remains unseen is the continuity of the process. This has happened countless times before, and will happen countless times again. Each event small in isolation, monumental in accumulation. Crabs do not need to be feared or admired in the way apex predators are. They simply need to be present. In ecosystems defined by flux, someone must be responsible for closure. Someone must ensure that death does not linger longer than necessary. Crabs fill that role with mechanical certainty, turning stranded life into fuel for the next cycle. Dozens swarm a single target not out of frenzy, but because the system demands efficiency. In the end, the cleanup army leaves no monument to its work. The shoreline looks as it did before, rocks slick with algae, pools reflecting the sky. But the absence of decay, the quiet readiness of the environment to support new life, tells the real story. Here, survival is not only about killing or escaping. It is about finishing what the tide begins and making sure nothing goes to waste. The reef hums with movement long before danger appears. Thousands of small fish hang in the water column like living glitter, bodies angled just enough to catch the light and throw it back in quick, blinding flashes. The school breathes as one, compressing and expanding with subtle shifts in current, each individual tuned to the pressure and motion of its neighbors. In this density, safety feels collective. A predator would have to choose, and choosing is slow. Then the water tightens. At first there is no visible attacker, only a ripple of unease that runs through the school. The rhythm falters. Spacing becomes uneven. A few fish turn too sharply, brushing scales. This is the moment the barracuda has already calculated for. It has been there all along, suspended just beyond the edge of attention, body rigid, fins barely moving, eyes fixed forward with an intensity that does not blink. The barracuda's stillness is not rest. It is tension stored. Its long, narrow body aligns perfectly with the direction of the school, minimizing its outline. From the side, it looks like a shadow or a floating branch, nothing that demands alarm. Near reefs, where vertical shapes and broken light are constant, this deception is especially effective. The fish do not register threat because nothing appears to be approaching. When the strike comes, it does not announce itself with motion. It arrives as speed. The barracuda launches in a straight line, transforming from motionless object to silver missile in a fraction of a second. Its acceleration is explosive, driven by a powerful tailstroke that sacrifices maneuverability for raw velocity. This is not a chase. It is a cut through space. The predator does not aim to pursue the fastest fish. It aims to create chaos. The first contact is almost incidental. A single fish is struck, sliced by teeth designed not for chewing but for shearing. The barracuda's jaws snap shut with precision, teeth interlocking like blades, gripping flesh just long enough to disable. Often the initial victim is not even consumed immediately. Its role is catalytic. The school reacts instantly, but not intelligently. Panic spreads faster than coordination. Fish scatter outward, breaking the tight geometry that once protected them. Some surge toward the reef, others dive, others freeze. In this confusion, the rules that govern collective movement collapse. Gaps open. Individuals become isolated. This is the shock effect, and it is the barracuda's true weapon. Unlike predators that focus on endurance or cooperative herding, the barracuda relies on psychological fracture. One strike does not feed it. One strike feeds the moment. By shattering the school's cohesion, it turns a dense defensive formation into a cloud of vulnerable targets. The reef, once a backdrop, becomes an obstacle course. Near structure, this effect intensifies. Fish fleeing blindly collide with coral heads, rock faces, and each other. Turns become sharper. Acceleration stalls. Injuries occur. The very complexity that shelters reef fish from some predators now works against them. The barracuda knows this terrain intimately. It positions its strike to drive prey toward hard edges, where escape routes narrow and mistakes multiply. As the school disintegrates, the barracuda adjusts its posture. The initial burst gives way to controlled movement. It does not thrash through the chaos. It selects. Target selection is where the barracuda's efficiency becomes apparent. It ignores intact subgroups that manage to reform briefly. It bypasses fish that regain alignment and speed. Instead, it locks onto the confused, the injured, the separated. A fish that turns the wrong way, one that hesitates, one that bleeds. These decisions happen rapidly, guided by sensory cues rather than deliberation. Vision plays a central role. The barracuda's eyes are forward-facing and well adapted for detecting contrast and motion, allowing it to track erratic prey against the visual noise of the reef. Its lateral line picks up pressure waves from struggling fish, adding another layer of information. Smell registers blood, but it is secondary. This hunt is about geometry and timing. When the barracuda commits to a kill, it does so decisively. Another burst of speed, another straight-line attack. The jaws open just enough, teeth slicing in and locking down. Unlike sharks that may release prey to wait for exhaustion, the barracuda's grip is final. The slicing teeth inflict damage that ends resistance quickly, reducing the risk of prolonged struggle near abrasive reef surfaces. This is not brute force. It is specialization. The barracuda's body is built around this strategy. Long, streamlined, and laterally compressed, it minimizes drag in a straight sprint. Its musculature is arranged for sudden acceleration rather than sustained pursuit. It cannot outswim prey over long distances, but it does not need to. Its success depends on winning the first second. Even its behavior between strikes reflects this focus. After a kill, the barracuda often retreats to stillness again, hovering near structure, allowing the reef to settle. The remaining fish may attempt to regroup, drawn by instinct back into a school. This reformation creates another opportunity. The predator waits, resets, and strikes again if conditions align. This pattern explains why a single barracuda can dominate an area briefly, breaking multiple schools in succession without needing to chase each individual prey item. Energy expenditure remains low compared to the gain. The reef does much of the work. Ecologically, this has significant consequences. Schooling fish play critical roles in reef systems, grazing algae, transporting nutrients, and serving as prey for larger animals. By targeting moments when schools are most vulnerable, barracudas influence not just population numbers, but behavior. Fish alter spacing, timing, and routes in response to predation pressure. They may avoid certain reef passages during peak barracuda activity, shifting grazing patterns and subtly reshaping reef dynamics. The barracuda's presence also affects other predators. Its shock attacks can flush prey into open water, creating opportunities for opportunistic hunters nearby. Conversely, its efficiency may reduce prey availability for slower predators. In this way, the barracuda occupies a niche as a destabilizer, a predator whose influence extends beyond direct consumption. There is a cold logic to this role. In open water, speed without maneuverability is risky. Near reefs, straight-line speed becomes devastating. The environment turns linear attacks into effective tools. The barracuda exploits this alignment of physics and habitat with ruthless consistency. Despite its fearsome reputation, the barracuda is not reckless. It avoids unnecessary contact with large, healthy prey that could damage its slender body. It does not linger in prolonged fights. Its aggression is precise, calibrated to moments when risk is lowest and return is highest. This restraint is often mistaken for cunning. In reality, it is evolutionary economy. The visual signature of a barracuda hunt is unmistakable. A sudden silver streak cuts through glittering baitfish, scattering light like shattered glass. Then calm returns almost immediately. To an observer, it can feel unreal, as if the violence were imagined. But the absence of motion tells the story. Where there was density, there is now space. Over time, reefs learn this lesson. Fish schools tighten sooner. Routes change. Some species hug the bottom more closely. Others venture into open water at different times. The barracuda adapts in response, shifting patrol zones, refining angles of attack. This feedback loop keeps both predator and prey in constant negotiation. There is a certain irony in how little drama the barracuda allows itself. It does not circle theatrically or display dominance. It does not roar through water or tear prey apart in view. Its power lies in interruption. It breaks patterns and leaves before attention can settle. As the light shifts and currents change, the barracuda resumes its vigil. Motionless once more, it blends into the reef's vertical lines, eyes scanning the shimmer ahead. Somewhere, a school will compress too tightly, drift too close to structure, or hesitate for just a fraction of a second too long. When that happens, the reef will flash, the water will split, and the lesson will be delivered again. In this world of glittering abundance and constant movement, survival belongs not to the fastest or the strongest, but to the predator that understands how fear propagates through a crowd and knows exactly when to strike to turn unity into vulnerability. Night arrives slowly on the seafloor. Light thins, colors flatten, and the reef edge dissolves into shadow. What looked crowded by day now feels cavernous, full of empty lanes and blind corners. This is not a retreat. It is a shift in ownership. As visual hunters lose certainty and smaller animals pull tighter into cover, armored shapes begin to move. At first, it is just one. A lobster emerges from beneath a ledge, antennae sweeping wide arcs through the water, testing currents, tasting chemical traces left behind hours earlier. Then another follows, then another, each maintaining a careful distance, not clustering, but not scattering either. What unfolds is not a swarm and not a march, but a loose procession, a night raid. Lobsters are not solitary by necessity. They are solitary by default. Most of the time, each individual occupies a shelter, a crevice or burrow, defended through posture, claw display, and memory of past encounters. But when food availability spikes, when currents deliver scent from a carcass or a patch of exposed invertebrates, that isolation softens. Multiple lobsters leave shelter and move in the same direction, drawn by the same signals, forming temporary feeding fronts across the bottom. These movements are slow but deliberate. Lobsters do not rush. Their strength lies in certainty. Each step places jointed legs carefully on sand or rock, minimizing noise and vibration. Antennae extend far ahead, acting as early warning systems, detecting both prey and competitors. The seafloor becomes a map written in chemical gradients and pressure changes, and lobsters read it fluently. The night raid favors animals built for contact. Lobsters are armored, their thick exoskeletons resisting abrasion, bites, and the scraping chaos of the bottom. This armor changes how they interact with the environment. Where softer-bodied creatures avoid confrontation, lobsters push forward. They wedge into gaps, flip rocks, and displace smaller animals simply by being too solid to ignore. Ambush here does not look like sudden speed. It looks like inevitability. A lobster approaches a slow-moving mollusk, a worm, or a crab already committed to a burrow. The prey senses pressure and attempts to retreat, but the lobster's bulk blocks the exit. There is no finesse required, just position. Feeding tools matter. Lobsters possess two primary claws that are not interchangeable. One is built for crushing, thick and powerful, capable of cracking shells with controlled force. The other is sharper, designed for cutting and tearing softer tissue. This division allows lobsters to handle a wide range of prey without hesitation. Hard shells are broken. Exposed flesh is sliced. Nothing requires prolonged struggle. This mechanical advantage turns lobsters into bullies of the benthic world, not through aggression alone, but through physics. Smaller bottom dwellers cannot apply enough force to threaten a lobster's armor, while the lobster's claws can disable them with precision. Even animals that might outrun a lobster in open terrain find themselves cornered against rocks, burrow walls, or the weight of the lobster's own body. Resource hotspots intensify this behavior. A fish carcass lodged between rocks, a patch of mussels exposed by storm surge, a dense cluster of urchins grazing algae. These sites attract multiple lobsters, sometimes from considerable distances. When they converge, the tone changes. Feeding continues but posture stiffens. Antennae rise higher. Claws lift. Territory fights here are less about violence than negotiation. Lobsters assess one another constantly, comparing size, claw spread, and past experience. Displays escalate gradually. One lobster advances. Another raises claws. They circle, antennae fencing lightly, exchanging information without committing to damage. Only when size is mismatched or space is critically limited does contact occur. When fights do happen, they are brief and decisive. A larger lobster uses its crusher claw to pin or flip the smaller opponent, ending the dispute without prolonged injury. The loser retreats, often permanently abandoning the hotspot. Energy is conserved. The winner feeds. This balance prevents feeding grounds from descending into chaos. Multiple lobsters can exploit the same resource sequentially or side by side, each carving out temporary access. The system favors confidence backed by armor, rather than reckless attack. Ecologically, these night raids matter. Lobsters are both predators and scavengers, removing slow-moving prey and consuming carrion that would otherwise linger. By breaking down hard-shelled animals, they open access for smaller scavengers that cannot breach those defenses. By feeding at night, they reduce competition with daytime predators and spread feeding pressure across time. Their movement also disturbs sediment. As lobsters walk, dig, and reposition prey, they aerate the seafloor, redistributing organic material and oxygen. This subtle engineering influences which organisms can survive in the substrate, shaping the benthic community far beyond what is visible. But dominance is not constant. Lobsters carry a built-in vulnerability that reshapes their entire behavior: molting. To grow, a lobster must shed its exoskeleton entirely. This process is unavoidable and dangerous. When the old shell splits and the lobster pulls free, it emerges soft, flexible, and nearly defenseless. Claws that once crushed shells become rubbery. Armor that deflected bites becomes pliable skin. For hours or days, depending on size and temperature, the lobster is transformed from bully to target. During this period, behavior shifts dramatically. Lobsters retreat deep into shelters, avoiding movement whenever possible. Feeding stops. Aggression disappears. Even the most dominant individuals rely on concealment rather than force. If discovered, a soft-shelled lobster cannot fight effectively. It can only flee, and fleeing is rarely successful on the bottom. Predators know this. Fish patrol crevices. Octopuses probe burrows with arms and suction. Even other lobsters may cannibalize a freshly molted individual if opportunity arises. The night raid pauses for those in transition. This vulnerability injects humility into the system. No lobster remains dominant forever. Growth demands exposure. Armor must be lost before it can be rebuilt. This cycle prevents absolute control of resources and ensures turnover within populations. Once the new shell hardens, strength returns quickly. Minerals reabsorb. Muscles regain leverage. The lobster emerges again, often larger than before, ready to reclaim territory or explore new feeding grounds. The risk is repaid with advantage. Visually, a night raid is both subtle and imposing. Armored shapes move across pale sand, claws held forward, antennae tracing invisible lines. When prey is found, movement tightens around a single point. Shadows overlap. Claws rise and fall. Then the group loosens again, each individual dragging away a portion or moving on to the next signal. There is no drama imposed for display, no wasted motion. Everything about the lobster's behavior reflects a life built around durability, patience, and leverage. It does not need speed. It does not need surprise. It needs time and contact. In the broader ecosystem, lobsters act as regulators of the slow. They remove animals that rely on shells, burrows, or immobility as defense. They recycle protein locked in armor and bone. They convert stranded or hidden biomass into energy that moves upward through food webs. Their presence also alters the behavior of others. Mollusks cluster differently. Crabs choose smaller shelters. Fish adjust nighttime patrol routes. Even predators that hunt lobsters learn to time attacks around molting cycles. The lobster shapes not just what it eats, but how others live around it. As night deepens, the raid thins. Individuals peel off toward shelters, bellies full, antennae lowering. Some remain active until dawn. Others retreat early, guarding territory against latecomers. The seafloor never becomes empty again, but it settles into a new configuration shaped by the night's work. By morning, little evidence remains. Shell fragments, disturbed sand, empty burrows. To a casual observer, the reef looks unchanged. But energy has moved. Armor has been tested. Hierarchies have shifted. Lobsters do not dominate through spectacle. They dominate through persistence, mechanical advantage, and a willingness to move when others hesitate. They understand the bottom as a place where force does not need to be fast to be final, where armor buys time, and where patience wins more meals than speed ever could. In the quiet aftermath of the night raid, the armored shapes vanish back into shadow, claws folded, antennae resting. Somewhere beneath the reef, a lobster hardens a new shell, waiting to return. Somewhere else, another senses the faint trace of food and begins to move. On the seafloor, power does not announce itself loudly. It walks. The reef does not register danger quickly when the threat moves at the speed of inevitability. There is no sudden shadow, no pressure wave, no burst of acceleration that sends fish scattering. Instead, the change arrives quietly, almost politely, as dozens of slow-moving bodies creep across rock and shell, arms extending, contracting, testing the surface like fingers searching in the dark. By the time the system reacts, it is already too late. Starfish do not hunt. They advance. Across shellfish beds and reef faces, they appear in numbers that feel unreal, orange and purple and pale beige shapes draped over one another, arms overlapping, tips curling and uncurling as they encounter resistance. From above, it looks almost static, like a spill of color frozen in place. But up close, the movement is constant, subtle, relentless. This is mass predation the strange way. No chase, no ambush, no strike. Just pressure applied over time until defenses fail. The prey here is usually immobile by design. Mussels clamped to rock, clams buried in sediment, oysters cemented into dense reefs. These animals evolved to withstand waves, drying air, and battering debris. Their shells are strong. Their muscles clamp tight. Against most predators, this works. Against a starfish outbreak, it becomes a liability. A single starfish poses little immediate threat. It moves slowly, its tube feet gripping and releasing with hydraulic patience. But when hundreds converge on the same bed, the rules change. What one cannot open, many can exhaust. The attack begins with contact. A starfish positions itself over a shell, arms wrapping around the edges, tube feet adhering with surprising strength. Each foot applies a small amount of force, almost insignificant on its own. But the starfish does not need to overpower the shell. It only needs to apply steady tension. Clams and mussels respond instinctively. They clamp shut, sealing soft tissue behind thick armor. This response works against snapping predators, but clamping is not free. It requires continuous muscular effort. Minutes pass, then hours. The starfish does not tire. It does not burn oxygen at the same rate. Its metabolism is slow, its energy demands minimal. The prey's muscles begin to fatigue. When the shell finally opens by a fraction, something extraordinary happens. The starfish does not bite. It does not pull the shell apart. Instead, it everts its stomach, pushing soft, pale tissue out through its mouth and into the narrow gap between shell halves. This is external digestion, one of the most alien feeding strategies in the ocean. Digestive enzymes flood the prey's interior. Flesh liquefies where it sits. The starfish is eating without swallowing. The prey is alive for part of this process, unable to close its shell fully, unable to escape, unable to fight back. Digestion proceeds slowly, efficiently, with no wasted effort. Once the soft tissue is broken down, the starfish withdraws its stomach, drawing the nutrients back into its body and leaving behind an empty shell. In isolation, this process feels almost surgical. In numbers, it becomes catastrophic. Shellfish beds that took years to establish can be stripped in days. Starfish pile atop one another, each individual feeding independently but contributing to the same outcome. The bed collapses not because of violence, but because of persistence multiplied by scale. This is siege warfare on a reef. The prey cannot run. It cannot hide. Its only defense is endurance, and endurance fails when pressure never stops. Even the strongest shells cannot compensate for muscles that must stay contracted indefinitely. The starfish understands this, not consciously, but evolution has shaped it into a creature that wins by waiting. Population booms turn this strategy into an ecological force. Under normal conditions, starfish numbers are limited by predators, disease, and food availability. But when those checks weaken, when nutrient input increases or predators decline, starfish populations can explode. Larvae survive in greater numbers. Juveniles settle densely. Suddenly, reefs face an army of slow-moving consumers with no immediate opposition. One of the most infamous examples involves crown-of-thorns starfish on coral reefs, but the pattern extends beyond any single species. When starfish reach high densities, their feeding transforms habitats. Shellfish beds vanish. Coral cover declines. The physical structure of the reef changes. This matters because structure is everything. Shellfish beds stabilize sediment, filter water, and create habitat for countless other organisms. Remove them, and water clarity drops. Algae spreads. Fish that relied on those beds for shelter or food move elsewhere or disappear. What began as starfish feeding becomes a cascade that reshapes the entire ecosystem. The starfish does not intend this outcome. It simply follows opportunity. When food is abundant and competition low, it feeds and reproduces. When predators are absent, it expands. The reef pays the price. The slow pace of this predation makes it easy to underestimate. There is no dramatic moment to point to, no single attack to film. Instead, the damage accumulates quietly. One bed thins, another collapses. Weeks later, the reef looks fundamentally different, stripped of complexity, simplified into bare rock and algae. Recovery, if it comes, takes years. Yet even here, the story is not one-sided. Starfish outbreaks often reveal imbalance rather than create it. Overfishing removes starfish predators. Nutrient runoff increases larval survival. Climate stress weakens coral and shellfish defenses. The starfish is not the villain. It is the symptom that becomes the mechanism. Biologically, starfish are perfectly suited to this role. Their radial symmetry allows any arm to function independently. Lose one, and it may regenerate. Their nervous system is decentralized, making them resilient to injury. Their tube feet operate hydraulically, generating grip without rapid fatigue. Their digestion bypasses the limitations of mouth size entirely. They are built to dismantle things that do not move. Even their slowness is an advantage. A fast predator must make decisions quickly and risk failure. A starfish can test, retreat, reapply pressure, shift targets. Time is its ally. On a reef measured in decades, waiting is a viable strategy. Visually, the effect is unsettling. A bed of living shellfish becomes covered in starfish bodies, arms layered like a living blanket. Shells gape open beneath them, then fall silent. The colors of the reef dull as structure disappears. To an observer, it feels as if the reef is being smothered rather than eaten. This transformation changes who can live there. Fish that depend on shellfish beds leave. Invertebrates that require hard surfaces lose attachment points. Algae and opportunistic species move in. The reef transitions from a complex three-dimensional habitat into something flatter, simpler, and less productive. Predators eventually respond. Some fish specialize in feeding on starfish, flipping them over to expose vulnerable surfaces. Diseases spread more easily through dense starfish populations. Food runs out. The outbreak collapses. But the reef does not reset automatically. Damage lingers. This delayed recovery is part of why starfish outbreaks are so impactful. They act faster than reefs can rebuild. The imbalance between destruction and regeneration creates long-term change. Yet in balanced systems, starfish play a critical role. They prevent shellfish from monopolizing space. They maintain diversity by removing dominant species. They open patches for new growth. At moderate densities, their feeding creates opportunity rather than devastation. The problem is not the starfish. It is the scale. When numbers stay in check, the starfish is a slow regulator, keeping ecosystems flexible. When numbers explode, it becomes a geological force, reshaping reefs the way storms reshape coastlines. As the feeding event continues, individual starfish finish their meals and move on, leaving empty shells behind. Others take their place. The pile shifts slowly, arms lifting and settling, tube feet releasing and gripping. There is no center, no leader, just motion distributed across many bodies. Eventually, when the bed is gone, the starfish disperse. Some drift to new feeding grounds, others starve. Larvae released earlier may settle elsewhere, continuing the cycle. The reef remains altered, quieter, flatter. Recovery will depend on currents, larvae, and time. In the end, starfish remind us that predation does not always arrive with speed or spectacle. Sometimes it arrives with patience, multiplied by numbers, exploiting the simple fact that not everything can move away from danger. On the seafloor, where escape is not always possible, survival is not about running faster. It is about not becoming the thing that cannot move when the slowest predator in the ecosystem decides to advance. The water column looks empty at first, a vast blue corridor with no obvious movement, but that emptiness is deceptive. It is not calm. It is loaded. Pressure builds invisibly as muscle and momentum approach from beyond sight, not creeping in from the edges like an ambush predator, but arriving head-on, fast enough to bend water itself. When tuna enter the frame, they do not announce their presence with stealth or patience. They arrive as force. A school of small fish drifts mid-water, loosely organized, bodies aligned just enough to share information without sacrificing freedom. This formation works against predators that rely on surprise or confusion. It offers early warning. It allows rapid dispersal. Against tuna, it fails catastrophically. The first sign of danger is not a shadow or a sudden turn, but a pressure wave. Water compresses. Light fractures. Then the school detonates outward as silver streaks punch through the center at full speed. Tuna are not ambush predators. They do not lurk, wait, or strike from concealment. They are endurance missiles, built to turn oxygen, muscle, and time into sustained velocity. Where many marine predators specialize in short bursts, tuna specialize in refusing to slow down. Their hunts are not moments. They are processes. As the tuna close in, they do not target individuals. They target structure. A cohesive fish school depends on alignment, spacing, and synchronized response. Tuna break those rules deliberately. Instead of circling or herding, they drive straight through, splitting the school into fragments that immediately begin to behave independently. Panic replaces coordination. Once fragmentation begins, the prey's most effective defense collapses. The tuna school moves as a unit, but not as a tight formation. Individuals spread slightly, offset from one another, allowing each to exploit openings created by the others. One tuna accelerates through the mass, forcing prey to scatter. Another follows through the gap milliseconds later, taking advantage of the disruption. This cascading effect compounds rapidly. Every strike makes the next one easier. The physics of this strategy are written into the tuna's body. The streamlined, torpedo-like shape minimizes drag at cruising speed, not just at maximum sprint. Unlike ambush predators that rely on a single explosive contraction, tuna operate in a regime where efficiency matters over minutes, not seconds. Their stiff, crescent-shaped tail oscillates with minimal lateral movement, converting muscular effort into forward thrust rather than wasted turbulence. Their skin contributes as well. Microscopic structures reduce friction by managing boundary layers of water along the body surface. Even small reductions in drag translate into enormous energy savings over long pursuits. In practical terms, this means a tuna can chase longer, recover faster, and repeat the process with less metabolic penalty than most prey species can tolerate. This advantage becomes overwhelming when combined with their internal physiology. Some tuna possess specialized heat retention systems that allow their swimming muscles to remain warmer than the surrounding water. This is not full warm-bloodedness, but it is enough. Warmer muscles contract faster and generate more power per unit of oxygen. In cold or temperate waters, this difference widens the performance gap between predator and prey with every second of pursuit. The result is relentless pressure. Prey fish are forced to maintain burst speeds far beyond what their physiology can sustain. Lactic acid accumulates. Coordination degrades. Reaction times slow. Even before a tuna strikes, exhaustion begins doing the work. As the hunt intensifies, the visual field fills with motion. Tuna streak through the water like polished metal, bodies barely flexing, eyes locked forward. Schools of prey compress instinctively, then rupture again under repeated impacts. Each pass triggers a chain reaction. A strike on one edge sends a shock through the entire school, causing internal collisions, misaligned turns, and sudden stalls. Fish that would be safe in a cohesive group find themselves isolated by the chaos. Unlike herding predators, tuna do not try to preserve prey density. They weaponize collapse. Fragmentation creates vulnerable targets faster than the prey can regroup. Once a fish breaks away from the school, its odds drop sharply. Tuna do not need to outmaneuver every individual. They only need to keep the system unstable. This approach scales. When tuna hunt in large groups, the effect multiplies. Multiple schools of tuna may converge on a single prey aggregation, attacking from different angles, driving the prey upward or outward into zones where escape options narrow. The water becomes a three-dimensional trap, bounded not by geography, but by speed. The sensory world of a tuna is tuned for this environment. Their vision is adapted for high-contrast detection in blue water, allowing them to track fast-moving prey against a bright background. Their lateral line system detects pressure changes and turbulence, helping them sense the movement of nearby bodies, even when visual clarity drops. In a high-speed melee, these inputs allow tuna to adjust trajectories in real time, avoiding collisions while staying locked onto targets. From the prey's perspective, the attack feels less like being hunted and more like being caught in a mechanical failure. There is no single predator to track, no clear direction of danger. The threat arrives from straight ahead, from behind, from above, all at speeds that erase reaction time. Survival becomes a matter of chance rather than strategy. As the feeding continues, the system feeds on itself. Panic produces mistakes. Mistakes produce isolation. Isolation produces kills. Each successful strike further destabilizes the remaining prey, increasing the probability of the next one. This positive feedback loop explains why tuna feeding events can strip entire schools in minutes. Yet even in this apparent frenzy, there is control. Tuna do not expend maximum effort continuously. They modulate speed, alternating between high-velocity passes and efficient cruising. This pacing allows them to sustain the hunt longer than their prey can sustain escape. The ocean, vast as it is, offers no refuge from endurance. When the prey density finally drops below a critical threshold, the hunt dissipates. Tuna slow. Their formation loosens. The water clears, leaving only drifting scales and scattered survivors regrouping in the aftermath. What remains is not just evidence of predation, but of a design philosophy shaped by evolution. Do not surprise your prey. Outlast it. Tuna occupy a unique ecological role because of this strategy. They are not specialists confined to narrow conditions. They are mobile regulators, capable of reshaping prey populations across enormous distances. Their migrations link ecosystems, transferring energy from productive feeding grounds to distant waters. Where they disappear, prey dynamics shift, often in unpredictable ways, because few other predators can replicate their combination of speed, stamina, and efficiency. Seen this way, The silver streaks through blue water are not just moments of violence. They are expressions of a long evolutionary negotiation between physics, physiology, and survival. Tuna do not win by being clever. They win by being inevitable.